Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Ben Salem Township School District Business Affairs, Facilities, and Technology Committee meeting. We have a very lengthy agenda, so we want to move right into it. We're going to move some of the things out of order just to accommodate some of our guests. Tonight, we have Mr. Ted Wallover from Wallover Architects. Him and Mr. Fanini are going to give an update on the high school swimming pool. Mr. Fanini, Mr. Wallover.
We are moving forward trying to find information for the pool. There's some issues that we have to work out. Mr. Wallover from Wallover Architects has some information going forward for the board. So,
In relationship to the issues that you're facing now with the pool heater and the Ceresco unit and roof, there are several things that have to happen in order to get that unit back online. The use of steel pipe interconnecting the pool to the Ceresco unit was the real source of the failure of that system. There was dielectric action between the differential metals, the chlorinated water, and that formed a scaling condition so that you've seen all the photographs of what's there.
Can you just give me 1 second? Can you clarify which pool you're talking about?
We're talking about the high school at this point, the newer pool. And so the solution to the problem is to get all of that pipe removed and new Schedule 80 PVC installed. The specifications that were written by the pool designer clearly specified that all piping that was in contact with pool water was to be Schedule 80 PVC. The temperatures we're dealing with the Ceresco unit and the heat exchanger up there are relatively low temperatures, so we don't need to worry about using CPVC, which is the high temperature piping. We can use a standard Schedule 80 PVC, and that would alleviate those issues. Now, all of the components in that system, including the insulation, all of the piping, the valves, the inline boiler booster pump for the Ceresco unit, all of that equipment is basically non-functional. So all of that has to be included in the replacement of that piping run. In addition, the heat exchanger in the base of the Ceresco unit has been fouled and compromised by that buildup of rust and debris. I did look at 6 months or so of the school's records of how the pool was being operated. We found no evidence of user problems. The pH levels were kept at a constant level. They were never, except on one occasion, did it get above 7.6. We had one day for one reading came in at 7.8. Everything else was between 7.4 and 7.6, which is the ideal range for pH. The chlorine levels were between 1.0 and 2.5 parts per million available free chlorine in every instance. So there was nothing in the way the pool was being operated that contributed to the scaling that took place in that piping. So I think, the staff was doing what they were supposed to do. It's just the fact that we had this dissimilar metal, chlorinated water, and it created a situation where anywhere water could, or scale could form, it formed within that piping. So that needs to be removed. I mean, the workmanship on the original application was excellent. When you look at the installation work and everything that was done by the original mechanical contractor, it was really quality work. The wrong material was used, and that's really the source of the problem. One other issue that you have with the pool currently is the pool heater is totally shot. It's the burner units are completely corroded. The heat exchanger in the bottom of the pool heater is gone. So that unit needs to be replaced. And what we suggested to the district was to look at a different system. The Lochinvar system that's in there is a typical condensing boiler, or it's a condensing unit. So in other words, you'll get condensation forming in the exhaust that comes out of the ductwork. It falls back into the bottom of the unit, and that's what helps corrode those units of the heat exchanger. And you're not getting full combustion because it's oversized to some degree. So what we looked at suggesting to you is, I put the district in contact with Patriot Pool Heating Company. They use a system of condensing boilers which are relatively small, and heat exchangers. So pool water and the heating elements never come into contact with one another. It's a titanium heat exchanger. It basically separates pool water from the heating process, and that heat exchanger then transfers the heat from the pool heater into the pool water. And because it's multiple boilers, you're only using enough energy to meet the demand. So in other words, instead of firing the entire pool heater, you're only firing one boiler at a time. And a 2-boiler system will work in this application. It's a little higher first cost, but the savings that you're going to generate in terms of energy loss through the roof with just overfiring the unit and the BTUs that go through the exhaust, that's going to be cut down significantly. So your operating costs should drop substantially. Tom is going to put together an evaluation for the district so they can look at the potential savings involved with that, so you can look at that over the life cycle of the product. Non-condensing boilers are much longer service life than a pool heater. Most pool heaters are 7 to 10 year lifespan. Yours lasted 18 months. And I think that really is a part of the problem with what was going on with the piping and the scale that was forming inside the heater, plus the oversizing of it. I think combined to make that situation kind of a accident waiting to happen. And so with that being fixed, those are the only 2 major elements we have to worry about with the pool. I do recommend that the filter be cleaned professionally by the manufacturer. They can come in and they can clean all the filter elements and make sure that there's no residue from what occurred for the first 18 months of operation. But those three units or 3 elements are the only things that really need to be done to get that pool up and running. And so the timeline for something like that to get it up is really simply a function of selecting a contractor, making sure the materials are available. And as we all know, Schedule 80, anything revolving around resins is problematic in terms of delivery. But I think we can certainly get that ball rolling and get you a timeline to get that taken care of. But at this point, the high school, I think, is the primary focus in terms of getting that pool up online. It is being filtered, it's being conditioned, the water's being chlorinated, and the pH is being maintained in it. But there's no interconnection between the Soresco unit at the top, and of course there's no pool heater available. So the water temperature in that pool is basically around 50, 55 degrees coming out of the ground, and it's staying that way. So that's really the story in a nutshell. Any questions that I can answer, I'd be more than happy to address for you.
The one thing I want to add is the timeline would be a few months, given that we're able to just move forward. We're going to put district solicitor in touch with Mr. Wallover because there's a recommendation to change the system that we currently have to a new system, which will save in the life cycle as well as operational costs.
Correct.
That's the optimal solution. So we're going to have to get an agreement for a dollar amount from the mechanical contractor to reimburse the school district. There probably will, well, there won't be probably, there will be some type of cost differential if we want to change the system that was originally specified with this new system. But I think that's something that we leave up to our solicitors to negotiate. You have a quizzical look, Ms. Ferrandez.
I just want to add something else to that. That time frame is subjective because supply chain around the country is affected in manufacturing and production exponentially. So a couple months, yeah, that's what we're saying right now. We don't know what the supply chain is also going to look like next week.
I think realistically, we are seeing some positive news in terms of piping. We're doing a pool project in the Pittsburgh area right now, and we're in the process of securing the piping for that. It is available in that particular marketplace. So my gut tells me that we're going to start to see that lighten up, which would be good. And again, I think once we can establish how the district wants to go forward with this, and I can't comment on what's happening between the original contractors and where you are right now, but the reality of it is that if the material is on site, it's not a long time frame to get that thing repiped. It can be done in a relatively short time frame. So it's a matter of getting the material here and then getting a contractor on board to get it installed.
I'm sorry, what is relatively short time for those of us who are completely ignorant of these
no,
things?
no. I'm thinking you're probably looking at a 3 to 6 week time frame in terms of construction to get the other material that's in there taken out, getting the new material in place, getting it insulated, and then getting the system up and running. So I'm saying you're probably looking at a worst case a month of actual construction for that particular segment. Now, the heat exchanger with the Soresco unit, that's certainly going to be subject to the supply chain. And without that, we aren't operating the air handling unit. Now, we can still operate the pool heater once we get that fixed. But the air handler is very important because it controls humidity within the space. And so that's something that you want to have the whole system up and running before you get it back in line with having all the kids back in the pool.
This is all BHS pool, and so there may be a problem with a different part?
No, I think everything that I've seen that I've been asked to look at in terms of the pool itself is wonderful design. I don't think there's anything.
No, I'm sorry, you just said something about an air handler, which I thought was Schaefer.
Well, the air handler.
Okay, we're
is-
talking all BHS. Thank you, Robin. So Robin knows that I need guidance, so he's shaking his head yes and no when I need it.
Okay,
Um,
thanks.
I'm sorry. You're like, oh, how'd she know that? Robin's back there helping me. Okay. So once our solicitor addresses things, John Steffi, once our solicitor addresses things, but that could be a month, and then
Yeah.
then the order gets placed and the materials get placed. We're mid-June for the commit. I know this isn't your bailiwick, but for the committee, we may not make September 1st. Doesn't look like it. Is that correct? Which is not our fault. I'm just saying it sounds to me.
There are a couple ways that this can be done. So, in my opinion, and correct me if I'm wrong, John, we could pay for the repairs ourselves and wait for the suit to come out and then get our money from that, and get the parts ordered and be on track for a September opening.
That's what I would recommend.
But this is something we would have to take action on this month. If we as a district were going to pay for this out of pocket
Well, that's where I'm heading.
and not
That's
wait
right.
for the lawsuit.
Right, because the suits, as you refer to us, will be a good month.
Yeah,
You can guarantee.
I agree with exactly what Mr. Price said. There's only one caveat. To go ahead and do it with district funds, we're going to have to get a waiver from PDE from the bidding requirement, which Mr. Waller believes we would be able to, but we'd
I
have to
think you
apply.
can, because this is more of a maintenance issue right now. It's an emergency situation. This is not a typical bidding climate. We're trying to get the pool that was up and running back online. And so I think if we handle it as a maintenance project, I think we have a much better chance of getting PDE approval to be able to get this work done quickly.
So again, without that waiver, we're still looking at 3 bids, meeting in July to get it approved, to get an August start to
Yeah.
even order parts, which would not have the pool open in September.
That's right.
The chance of being ready for the swim season in terms of competition is real, though. I think with the time we have available, provided that we can get the heat exchanger for the Soresco unit, and that has to be a Soresco product. That can't be competitively bid. That has to come from the manufacturer of that equipment. And that's why I'm saying I think you have some wiggle room in terms of how you can approach the project. But I think getting the pool up and running for the swimming season is a definite possibility. The actual work in terms of repairing the piping, the damaged piping, is not a significant time frame.
But
Then-
there are just a few things contingent on that.
Oh,
too, so
absolutely. I agree.
It's plausible, but certain steps and certain things have to get in a row in order for it to happen.
Correct.
How long does normally getting an emergency, well, I have 2 comments, but how long does it normally take to get an emergency waiver?
I mean, the application is very simple. You're still required to get 3 quotes, instead of going out to bid for 3 weeks and then having the board award. But they usually turn that around. I mean, it's been, 15 years since I've applied for one of these. But it was a very short timeline. Now, I don't know if they have as many people at PDE as they did 15 years ago to process these things, but I'm just going based on my own past experience. It was a short timeline.
And there's also the second consideration is, once you pay for, speaking on behalf of the suits, once you pay for something yourself, the process of getting reimbursed can be a little more difficult. Sometimes, depends on the players, but sometimes that's a factor out there. We've lost our compelling urgency of, we've got kids. When does swim season start? More ignorance on my part. I'm sorry, I'm not a swimmer.
November.
November, so, but we are running classes.
Sure. You saw
Kids
it
have
be-
signed up for classes at the high school. I don't know how many, maybe Mrs. Nicholas from Instructional Affairs might know, but there are kids who are signed up for classes, and they're gonna have to change their schedule then, at least for, that's just something for Instructional Affairs to think about, and Mr. Garska, I guess, but it's not looking, it's not, Dr. Lee, it's probably not looking like kids who have signed up for some, like, particular swim class at the high school are gonna make it by August enough to complete a full, 2 marking periods worth of instruction. So the high school should probably be alerted to have those kids swap their classes.
What type of cost is this? Like, I don't see any breakdowns. Is there any cost figures that are being provided?
There were some cost figures provided back in December from Dewey Engineers, and they did do an analysis of what the replacement costs were based on the original contract documents and what was involved. Obviously, December to now June, 6 months, that's certainly been an impact with inflation. But the other thing we're seeing is this COVID impact. We're seeing anywhere from 20 to 25% increase right now across the board, and it's kind of a, I don't want to say crapshoot, but to make an estimate right now is just simply that, it's an estimate. Because again, we're finding out with the force majeure letters that are coming out from different manufacturers that they'll hold their price for a week, they'll hold their price for a day or two. I mean, so we don't really have a good handle on where we are with this, although as I said earlier, we are seeing indications that the resin-based problems that we saw from the refineries in Texas regarding PVC and plastics is starting to wane. So I think there is going to be some positive movement on that. Now the question is, will those manufacturers let their prices drop to where they were before this all happened? I highly doubt it. So there's going to be a price increase we're going to have to be aware of that's there. So the numbers from December, and I don't have those, and I did not generate them, so it's available through your office. Robbins has all that information.
It was about 110 or 120,000.
I think that's what the number I saw. So if you put a 25% factor on that, you're 130, 140, and I think that's probably a reasonable number to consider for that. And I know there is the differential on the boiler system, or the condensing boiler system versus the standard pool heater. But I think if we can get you the information from Patriot Pool Company in terms of what the anticipated savings might be, I think you can see where there may be a real rational reason for doing that.
So what we plan to do, we're going to get our solicitor involved, district, Mr. Wallover, and get a plan moving as quickly as we can to get this addressed, and hopefully get our pool opened around September or soon thereafter.
I've through Mr. Wallover, I've contacted Patriot. They've come out and take a look at the heater system. He's getting me a price for that. I contacted Sassmore. They're going to come out and look at the rooftop unit to change the heat exchanger and give me a price to do the piping. So we'll have some numbers shortly.
Okay. And you said Sassmore was the original sub for the mechanical contractor anyway at the pool?
Yeah, I believe they were, yes.
I think they installed the Ceresco unit. They're the local Ceresco rep.
Okay,
So.
all right, very good. Right, okay. Any questions on more questions on the high school pool?
Okay.
Not for you, just so if we need to vote on anything, it would be nice if we could possibly, it may not be doable to vote in June as opposed to having to visit each other in July.
We'll do everything possible to get the information together by our June 23rd meeting. Okay, thank you. We're staying on pools, though. The next item up is the Schaefer swimming pool. We've handed out our costing out of the Schaefer pool, and I know there was discussions on making, yeah, I gave you.
For the public, in case you couldn't hear that, we're moving, changing the order of agenda for our guests who are here.
At our last full school board meeting, there was a request to have the Schaefer Pool placed as an agenda on business affairs to determine, I guess, definitively what the path is going forward. So this is open for discussion and questions.
Is this information up so the public can inspect it? It's hard to have a, did you guys back there get copies? You did? Okay, thank you. Is this up where the public can see? So for the public, what we have is a cost. I don't know. John, could you explain?
Sure.
I know that.
Here's a cost out
read.
Mr. Haskins prepared based on the last full year before COVID hit us. And basically, it's all of our expenses for that 18-19 year, and all of our revenue. Now, the expenses and the revenues have been updated to reflect current year prices, but the hours are still consistent, and the uses are still consistent with our last full operational year. And the depreciable costs, that was done by ICS, which we've incorporated in this report, based on their estimated useful life of our equipment and the cost, and depreciating that over the useful life. We've incorporated those yearly costs for the pool equipment.
Do we have a breakdown of the swim revenue as well?
It's in there. It's 153,648.
No, I asked for a breakdown. I saw the total number.
I mean, I can get you that breakdown. I don't have it with me. I mean,
I'd like to see that just to make sure.
sure. Okay. We can forward that to you. I mean, the pool revenue was adjusted by approximately $30,000 to reflect our new rental rates. So the actual revenue for the 18-19 school year was approximately $123,000. With the new rental rates that we charge now, they would have paid an extra 30, so that's why that 123 was modified to 153.
And I have a couple of questions, make sure I'm understanding this. So we have one maintenance worker who does, if both pools were operational, we have one full-time maintenance worker just for pools?
That's correct.
Well, what about, and one custodian who does nothing but pools?
One half
Schaefer-
custodian.
Well, half Schaefer, half BHS?
This is half, we have a custodian at Schaefer that half of his time is dedicated to pool. I mean, Mr.
Could I
Matthew, if
have-
you want to, or
could
Mr.
I-
Fanini, if you want to expound on that further.
Yeah, could I have a little, forgive me again, maybe it's my ignorance, but I don't understand why we have a full half-time custodian. And I only am familiar with the Schaefer pool because I took my own kids there, for swim lessons. And I know we're not using it during the day, so it's for swim lessons and the teams and whatnot. We need a full-time half custodian for that?
No, their section's broken up. They do other parts. They do another part of the building. Then after the rentals are gone, they go in, they clean, sanitize the pool.
So it's not a half-time then, for the pool specifically, based on what you just said?
It's close to 4 hours. They go in, they do the locker rooms and clean the pool, rinse the pool deck down, sanitize that. They do that, yes. Same thing at Schaefer.
To fix this pool, get it open, what is the cost of it? I mean, this is, I see the revenues and some expenses here. What does it cost to get it up and running?
Well, there's a couple of things that, you gotta replace the rooftop unit. Okay, that's gotta be replaced. And that cost is around, and it's ballpark, it's not, don't quote me to it. Again, with the price increases, it's probably gonna be higher. Around $250,000 for the rooftop unit alone. The ductwork's gotta be checked out, make sure it's clean, not mold or anything in there, that's gotta be all done. The pool's gotta be grouted. Mr. Waller said we could probably fill it without grouting it and getting it going, but it's something we have to look at down the road. But we could probably open it without grouting it. So, but the rooftop unit's the problem, and like he said, the time frame getting a unit is probably 12 to 16 weeks before you can get a unit, if you start doing it today. Get all the engineering done, get the unit ordered, and then getting it on site, removing the old one, putting a new one on. So you're talking at least three or 4 months, and then possibly installing might take another 2 to 3 weeks doing the work to get ready to open. So you're talking 4 months down the road.
If I may, Barry's here. He did the study on the pool. I can speak real off his head.
For the public who can't hear, because I know Mr. Matthew doesn't have a button, Mr. Matthew is suggesting we have someone else who could speak to this.
Yeah, we have a ICS who did the study on the Schaefer pool originally.
Mr. Panini, before you go, can I also understand, why do you need a half-time maintenance worker at the Schaefer pool? I understand chemicals, whatnot, but why
We have a
4
full-time.
hours every day
We have a full-time.
between two pools? But why would you need a half of a day every single day at Schaefer?
He does that whole pool area. He might not be at Schaefer for. He may be at the high school 6.
Well, but each pool, in terms of operating the pools, right? Half the cost is being attributed to Schaefer and half the cost is being attributed to BHS. For the life of me, I can't understand what, 4 hours every day, what's possibly being done? Again, I think,
Preventive maintenance work, just to keep everything. Yeah,
He has many chores to do. You put the turtle in there.
can someone tell me what the mini chores are?
I don't have a breakdown what he does every day, but the idea is to keep the pool operational.
But
He'll
we
change
haven't,
filters. He'll change filters on the rooftop unit. He does maintenance work, and sometimes we may have to use him elsewhere. For the most part, he does both pools.
I guess what I'm getting at, I suspect it's probably more like 25%, which does affect, because I understand we have needs elsewhere and whatnot, and
Well, he sets up for the meets. He does a lot here. We can't think of everything off the top of our head right now. We weren't ready for that. He does a lot of work in that pool. He has to do the touch pads. He has to do the lane markers. Then he has to take them down when swim class comes in. It's a continuous
you're going to need to push a button, John. I know. There's one right there. Yeah, join. Or swap with
Here you
Mr. Haskin or something. Oh, wait, there's one right there at the end by Dr. Lee. Sorry about that.
He has continuous work to do. He has to set up for events, break down for events. The turtles have to be put in. A lot of stuff has to be PM'd continuously, the filters, the pump, the compressors. It's an ongoing job. He breaks the filters down, cleans out the fiber filters inside. It's not like he's just standing there watching the water. Reading the chemicals is really the quick and easy part. It's all the mechanical part that he has to worry about.
Well, that's why I couldn't understand. It says maintenance worker.
Well, he is. He's a maintenance specialist. Like I have an electrician, this is a pool specialist. He's responsible for both pools. Setup, breakdown, cleaning, chemicals. He would grout the pool this summer if we were doing that. We'd empty the pool out, and he would grout Schaefer's pool.
So
We're
then there
asking
would
why.
be no cost to grouting other than the actual materials.
Different type of grout work. This is a complete grout job. We just fill in here and there.
You just said if we were going to do it, he would do the grouting.
Different type of grout work. He'll do a little pieces that are missing at the top, not grout the entire pool.
Maybe I just can't understand.
If
It's not
anyone has
because
a-
I think that the gentleman shouldn't be employed. I'm just saying I suspect, like many things, that this is an estimate. And I'm also not suggesting that the gentleman's not working. I don't even know this gentleman. That's not the suggestion. I'm just suggesting that attributing it to the pool, the Schaefer pool in particular, may not be quite this cost on either of these people. And it's no suggestion that they're not doing their jobs or working. I suspect their jobs don't really require quite this time. So,
Well, if I
and then
may-
we
I-
don't do these repairs, right?
If I may, I just thought of something else too. He also has the locker rooms to take care of, lighting, everything. That's all his responsibility.
What has to happen in the locker rooms? Cleaning, that's the custodian.
No, but any,
No, the cleaning is custodian, but there's still maintenance in there. There's shower heads in there. There's things like that that he has to maintain.
he keeps busy. We keep him busy.
Again, I'm not suggesting the gentleman's
I know,
not working
but
hard. That,
so-
in case that gets around, that's not at all what I'm suggesting.
No.
And he does nothing else for the district other than pools?
Sometimes if we need him elsewhere, he does. He assists the other techs.
That's what I would imagine.
Yeah,
That makes sense to me.
yeah.
Which is why I think it's probably not 50%. Same with custodian. I'm sure if the custodian's needed elsewhere in Schaefer, that he or she is, does what work is needed in the building, I would imagine.
Yeah, but their main responsibility is keeping the pool area locker rooms clean.
Have we decreased our custodial staff since we haven't been operating Schaefer?
Yes, we've moved them around, yes.
So let me just kind of try to add some clarity. This is like any other 50-50 position we have in the district. Any position that spends time in multiple schools, at some point in the budget, you have to put it on a line item where it's going to cost out at. And this is where this is costed out at. It doesn't allot that 4 hours is at Schaefer. This is where the line item of the budget for his salary is coming out of only.
Oh, I very much understand that, but we're having a community discussion about what is the real cost of the pool.
And right now, this is the
Because-
real cost of the pool because that's where the line item in the budget comes from. So unless we change the budget, this remains the real cost of the pool.
Well, no, it's where it's budgeted. It's not the real cost. Those are two different terms.
Mr. Stuffy, I was always under the impression that the Schaefer pool was cost neutral.
No, that's. I know
So we
that's-
actually end up spending more money on the
Yes,
pool than we
That's-
actually
yes, that's-
receive.
Yes.
And it used to be more before the rental, even before the 100 and, well, it would have been 120, because that was an increase from what it was a few years ago, too.
Yeah, we met with Mr. Palladoro and went over all the numbers, and he did point out and that the revenue figures that we had utilized in our original presentation represented the actual rental from 1819, and since that time, we've had an increase in our rental rates. So Mr. Haskin went back and recalculated what those rental rates would have been had the current rental schedule been in place in 1819, and it did increase the rental income by $30,000. So we've reflected that in our numbers.
I had one more question, and this is going to be going back a bit, so I don't know. I tell you, in 1920, before COVID hit, but in 1920, was when Schaefer was still operational, was it full, or were there out in the schedule? Is what I no, it's not full of water. No, was the schedule full in terms of could we have rented to another group or something? I don't remember.
We get calls all the time to use our pool, and we were maxed out in 2020.
And has there, I don't recall, I sit on instructional affairs. Because one thing I'm very interested in is also using the Schaefer Pool for swim lessons for our own students. And I think Mrs. Rivera had been interested in that, and there are others who are very not interested in that. So I know that's not, there's certainly no universal agreement on that.
The problem is with the middle school, we only have the pool in one middle school. And by the time the kids in a 45-minute period got to the other side of Humeville, which in itself, I didn't even say the road right. By the time they got to the other side of the street, and then back, they would have, maybe 10 minutes in the pool on a good day.
How would that be? We shuttle kids back and forth now. That's not true.
Have you tried to corral a bunch of middle schoolers and get them to a place in a certain amount of time and have a functional class period? Trust me.
Not that many at one time. Well, I'm still interested.
Are there any
So
other?
then really the question is, does the board, let's assume these numbers are correct, although I'm a little suspect on some, but it's basically correct, right? Does the board think it's worth the annual cost is the question, right?
Well, I think part of my question is if this board were to decide to close the pool, what exactly would we do with it? Because I think that's a two-part question.
Well, there's a lot of unknowns at this time. I mean, I know this board is looking at the possibility of renovating or consolidating middle schools. So that's something that's up in the air and that's an unknown. So I guess that has to factor in your decision that if the board does move forward with that concept, I know that's 50-50 at best, but you would be putting money into a school that you would eventually close in several years. So that's one aspect. If we were to close that could be converted into classrooms. You know that, I know other districts have closed pools and they fill them in with a styrofoam product and basically put a floor over it, and you can then reutilize it for classroom space. Or you can.
High school cafeteria is like that.
Pardon?
The high school cafeteria is like that. They filled that pool in, that's
Oh,
part
I
of the high
didn't
school
realize there
cafeteria.
was a pool up there. Okay.
You
Personally,
didn't- Wait a
myself-
minute, what do you mean you didn't know?
The high school cafeteria.
Oh,
used to be a
did you
pool.
arrive after that renovation?
Yeah.
Personally, myself, and I've said this publicly a bunch of times, we need to make sure these programs are taken care of. And these are vital programs for our residents, and either, if they can't be done with one pool, we must have two pools. We must, accommodate these programs. And I've said this many, many times. And I think it would be imperative that we make sure that our swimming people are taken care of it is very imperative for our community.
What I would recommend, it seems like what we typically do is, correct me if I'm wrong, committee members can tell me to be quiet. But what we typically do is have the committee vote on it, but this seems to be like it's a bigger topic than just a committee. Maybe we just bring a motion before the full board to approve moving forward with repairs, and it either gets voted in or it gets voted out. And then it's put to rest, and then if you'd want, at that point, we can look at alternative uses. We can discuss if it gets turned down, and if it gets approved, then we just move forward with the repairs.
Hey, with that said, ICS is here with Barry with the talk about the rooftop and what that potentially could cost us. So I'd like to hear what he has to say.
I think we should focus on the high school right now. Get
But
that
the
thing up
board
and
would
running.
very much like to hear about Schaefer.
Absolutely. But we need to get the ball rolling with the high school. We want to have any chance of opening on time.
Don't we have a plan of action for that? And hopefully something will go before the board in June, whatever may be
Yeah, we're
needed.
working on that.
Right, so
We're
I
gonna
think
do
we're ready
every-
for Schaefer.
Everything we can to get that before the board.
I understand.
I didn't say put you, I'm saying we have to get the high school thing done.
We know. But we can do two things at once,
Okay.
I bet. Walk and chew gum.
I think what Robin's trying to say, if we can move the high school project maybe on the end of the month agenda, I don't know how you feel.
Yeah, I already said that, and Mr.
Yeah.
Steffi said that he
Yeah,
would try
we-
to do that.
we-
There's
we
no
can
question about that.
Then our kids will have a program and the community will have a program. Maybe
Well-
by mid-September, I would ask the professional more about that, but that's close.
No, but the problem is one pool doesn't accommodate a lot of the community things. And I also know that having, like, just take Ben Salem Aquatics, right, which a lot of us who have kids sent our kids learn to swim there. It's not real compatible, especially when there's swim season. You know, things are late, which causes the parents problems. If a baby takes a poop in the diaper, in the pool, then the swim team is inconvenienced, right? And it's just not real workable. So we'd like to hear about Schaefer.
So,
No, I
so I just
understand
want,
it. I'm
John, 1 second. So I just want to add something to that. Everything I've been looking, listening to, hearing, right now, for anybody in our district to have water activities quickly seem to stem to the high school.
Oh, no question about that.
And then,
But we've already discussed
Stephanie, I'm
that and
talking. Can
are
you
on
give me a
board.
second? Let me just finish my thought. Then Schaefer, with everything that has to go on, there's probably not a way you see water activities in that school with everything that has to be done, in my opinion, to probably 2023. It's not something that's going to get done in September. It's not something that's going to get done in October. It's not something that's going to get done in
Why?
November. Because if you've tracked the trends in supply chains and how rooftop and AC units and what's going on in the industry right now, to get a unit for that rooftop, you might be 6 months out to even get a unit if you ordered it today. And there's potential for units for any type of industry that might be 9 months out, depending on what the supply chain is and where you're at. So for anybody to think that there's a quick fix turnaround on Schaefer is fooling themselves. We got to live in reality and how we get stuff to do the repairs. So I agree we should look at it and try to do what we can. But in reality, there's no quick fix to Schaefer. You're probably not getting into a Schaefer pool, even if we agreed in June to January, in my opinion. And I could be way off. But
Okay, but let's go ahead and have the discussion because there's no disagreement with what either Mr. Matthew or Mr. Fanini have said. The board's fully supportive, so I'm not sure why we sidetrack there. I think we're ready for Mr. Eisler. There's no question about that. No one's suggesting we do Schaefer and not do BHS. That would be ludicrous, right? So there's not a problem there.
I'm okay with opening Schaefer Pool, I'm just giving you guys,
Well, I swear, I think we just said that. We're all on board.
Well, what's the BHS pool? Yeah, there is no discussion. Right, but with Schaefer, like Mr. Steffi said, that's part of a much larger conversation that needs to be completed.
I do agree, absolutely. I was going to comment about that. I mean, Mr. Steffi's correct. I can do it on occasion. In my first full year on the board, 2018, Ms. Woods and I, Ms. Fingles, we submitted a memo that we would like to look at getting sixth grade back to middle schools, and of course that would probably require some middle school renovation. We urged that 2018 before June. Now, we are 3 years later, and that has not happened. I keep hoping that will happen. I am not in favor of consolidating middle schools. I'm happy to say that publicly. But whatever is going to happen, there would have to be some room made, right? I just don't want to have one big middle school. But I agree those conversations need to happen. But since at least 3 of us have been on paper asking for them for 3 years and they have not concluded yet, I don't know how long we're supposed to wait to make that decision. And if anybody doesn't have that memo that I presented publicly, the 3 of us presented publicly to the board, I'd be happy to bring it again. But because of that, it is very sensible to have those larger discussions first but it's now 3 years later. So, and we're not concluded.
I will, I feel it's fair to share that any middle school consideration moving forward, different than our current footprint, does not consider a pool at Schaefer. That,
You've made that decision? Is that, I mean, I'm sorry.
no, I haven't made, no. Any of the renovation or addition suggestions eliminate the pool space, the aquatic space at Schaefer.
Well, I'd like to see some that don't. I bet Mr. Cohen would like to see some that don't eliminate a pool. Is that correct? You sound like Mr. Cohen. I agree with Mr. Cohen.
Yeah.
So I hope when we meet with the architect, whenever that's going to be, that there might be another option. Since we haven't met with the architect, I probably missed it. It probably is in the library somewhere, but
It is, and I'm looking at some renderings from 2016, and the ones that were worked up later in 2020 also, or 2019 also, renovate that space from an aquatic area to an additional gym.
I remember there were some that there were some different concepts out there, so,
And that's what they are, concepts.
but I don't know. Hear from Mr. Eisler?
Hi, I'm Barry Carl with ICS. 2 years ago, we did do a study on the Schaefer pool. Some of you might remember me. I didn't prepare anything, so I'm...
Hey, Barry, first off, it's nice to see you here.
Oh,
Barry, it's nice to see you here.
Thank you.
We know you went through some stuff, so
Yeah.
it's really, really nice to see you here and doing well. So glad to see you.
It's good to be here. Thank you very much. Yeah, with that said, I mean, we did do a study about 2 years ago. The pool replacement itself, the unit on the roof, we budgeted 2 years ago at $250,000. That was just the pool, the pool rooftop unit. From that point to this point today, I mean, I would add another $100,000 for that easily. So put that at around $350,000. And then on top of that, we also looked at the other condition of the space. So there's ductwork that is questionable, the grouting, the doors. It just needs a general refresh in that area. And that would be budgeted at about $100,000 as well. So total, you're looking at about $450,000 to $500,000 to refresh that pool area. That's just a rough budget, obviously. And as far as the timeline goes, I mean, I would agree. You're 6 to 8 months out, I would say, before you could have a space ready to go for that, to get everything done. And that's an estimate, and with the condition we're in today, and, you know, with supply chains, it's really hard to say. Does anybody have any questions?
Barry, you have any issues getting stuff for some of your projects on any other place? I'm in, industries,
Yeah.
so I have my own supply chain problems, so I'm intimately connected with the issues, but
It's-
just not yours. So are you having any issues with any of the projects you're working on now, getting stuff?
There are issues. Timelines are getting extended. Contractors are getting harder to pin down. Contractors are getting harder to procure for work, for sure. And we're seeing that. We're seeing that in the market. It's happening now. So, to give you a clear timeline on what could happen is very hard to do. I think 8 months is probably a reasonable estimate if we got started now. And, we did the design and we put it out there for bid and we got contractors on board. Unit deliveries alone have extended, months. So the unit itself is at least 12 weeks out.
Now,
That's from
John,
order.
is this something that we could do this similar as the pool? Maybe, forgive me for getting your name.
Barry.
No, not you, Barry. Mr. Waller. As an emergency thing too, or will this have to go through the full bid process?
If it's limited to the HVAC system, I think you do have the opportunity to at least explore that as a possibility. Regarding your timelines, I'm doing the Norman High School over in Pittsburgh right now. We issued a purchase order for our rooftop unit 4 weeks ago. We got a notification yesterday that it's now going to 16 weeks for delivery instead of 8. So what you're telling everybody is absolutely correct. It's happening everywhere across the board. And that is a specific pool dehumidification unit. So these things really are, it's real. And it's something that if you're going to plan for this, you need to make a decision, get your ducks in a row, and start looking at how you're going to get a schedule built around this. Because without having your documents in line and pricing, you're just pushing this timeline down the road.
I get phone calls daily from vendors pushing their timeline out, and I'm waiting for stuff, so I get it.
And you're right? So this is the reality. Everything's taking longer, so I'm certainly not surprised that, specialty parts like this are taking longer. That makes sense. Can't even get your plumbing fixed, right, in your house. So I think what you just said, right, that's the bottom line. We need to make the call. If we're going to do it. And Dr. Lee, do we have a meeting with the architect? Because obviously I'm sensitive if we're ever going to make the decision about the middle schools. Do we have one?
June 22nd.
It is June 22nd. So, well, I don't know. I think Mr. Steffi maybe is, let me see, our board meeting's the 23rd, and we're meeting with the architect the 22nd. Correct? I don't know, up to the chair.
I do agree with what Mr. Steffi said with regards to bringing it before the board for a vote. I think one of the biggest pieces of feedback we've gotten from the community is they need to know what they're going to do with their folks. And I think they've just been kind of hanging out in limbo. Granted, we're in the middle of a pandemic, so nobody could use the pool. But now that the climate is shifting and things are shifting, I'm sure they're very eager and waiting to figure out what's happening with the pool. So I would like to see it go before the board so we can decide what we're doing.
And if it's going to take 18 months, I understand your point, Mr. Price, then we would know. Or if the answer is the board is not in favor, then it's no, and then everybody knows.
Yeah, but we do need to give them some sort of direction. We can't just have them hanging out in limbo forever.
Right. I just want the information out there because there is the thought that this is a quick fix and that we can just do certain things and get it open. And I just want to dispel that myth that that's not possible so we can stop hearing about it. I'm for it. I just want people to realize that the reality is that it's going to take time to get done, even if we approve it, and that there is no quick fix, and it's not going to happen tomorrow.
I have a question. I'm zooming in because I'm out of town. And I tried to jump on here for a little bit. Mrs. Nicholas mentioned that if we had the students do swimming during gym class, bringing the kids from Snyder to Schaefer would be quite an ordeal. My question is, does anybody know what we did before? Years ago, the kids at Schaefer did have swimming during their gym class. So what did we do with the kids at Schaefer? I'm sorry, at Snyder. Did we bring them over in the past, years ago? Does anyone know that answer?
That's a good point. Something must have happened. Wait. Hold on, Mrs. Rivera. Bill's talking. Hold on. Bill's saying they did all 3 middle schools before. There, he's got a mic now.
That was a long time ago. That was way before I was here, but I know that they brought Armstrong over, they brought Snyder over, they brought Schaefer over. Well, Schaefer was already there.
Right. Do we know how that worked out? Does anybody know how that worked out? Or do we know anybody in the school district that was there when that was going on?
I'm asking Ms. Wood. She was at Armstrong back in the day.
I don't remember anything about swimming because I couldn't swim at that point. So
Ms. Woods could have benefited.
I could have used it back then. Yes.
So, unfortunately, they stopped the program because there was a student who drowned.
Correct. I understand that. I understand that's why we stopped the program. But I was just wondering how it worked when the kids were using the pool during gym class and we were busing the other two schools.
Well, you're right. We must have
I mean,
done something.
The classes were probably 45 minutes, 50 minutes. Kids have to hustle. They got to hustle. Got to put a little pep in their step.
I don't remember Armstrong, but I remember Snyder used to walk across sometimes in good weather. They used to walk across.
Even in the winter?
No, in good weather.
I would be interested in how that worked.
Wonder if Mrs. Leon knows. She's not with us this evening. But
I don't know whether she
No.
was there when it went on.
all right, I'll post it on Facebook. Somebody who took the class, we'll find out.
Please,
Give me
please don't
15
do that.
minutes.
please don't do that, Mrs. Ferrandos.
Too late, Mrs. Rivera.
You also have to keep in mind that class schedules are a little more tightly packed now than they used to
Sure.
be before standards and everything else. I'm not saying that we didn't have a standard for our students.
Right.
As per PDE. So it's not comparing apples to apples. When you're looking at what was done, I can safely say decades ago,
Well, the
compared
pool
to
was
now.
the pool at Schaefer was closed in the 90s, 94, 95, possibly. Am I
Yeah,
on target?
in the
there?
mid-90s, yeah.
Mid-90s. So I guess it wasn't that long ago, but it was long enough. Do we have archives of that information?
I don't believe we have any official archives of anything for the swimming pool. I just was part of the middle school rotation after the situation that took place.
Right.
So
Okay. I'd like to thank Mr. Wallover. I know he's had a long day. He's been in Virginia. He's agreed to stay on to answer any of the questions in addition to the high school about Schaefer. So if there's no more questions for Mr.
Wait, I wanted to say, I know we're not at public comment, but Madam Chair, I think all three of our community members who have come out tonight are about the pool. Is that correct? If we keep it brief, could they ask a question before these gentlemen leave? About anything they've heard tonight? Not about the numbers, because these gentlemen wouldn't know anything about that. But not about the economics of the pool, but anything that these two gentlemen might know. Madam Chair.
Said I'm fine with that. But, we also want to be respectful of other people's time. Is that something that we need everybody present for?
I think you do.
Are you okay to stay for a couple more minutes? Is that okay with you? I want to be respectful of your time. Okay.
Hello, everyone. John Polidoro. I hope we take this to a vote on the 23rd. And what happens, happens. I have a few questions here regarding some of the information today.
John, real quick, is any of it for these two gentlemen?
Yeah, it is.
Okay,
It is.
perfect.
I apologize, I did not catch your name. Part of his, what's your name? Barry Carl. Barry Carl. Barry, when you present your analysis of the Schaefer pool, it did include grouting the pool.
There was a budget that we did after the initial analysis that looked at grouting the pool. Yeah,
What was in it? Was it in the analysis that you submit to Mr.?
it was not in the original analysis, no.
Wasn't in this analysis here? Where it says, pardon me, it wasn't in the analysis here for pool and deck regrouting,
That was O&M life cycle cost budget over 10 years, so
but it was
that's,
still pool and deck regrouting.
yeah, that was.
And also, you said tonight that.
Excuse me, gentlemen. We did make a mention that we weren't going to talk about the numbers. So if you have a question in preference to the direction that we want to go, then please feel free. But we're not going to sit here and debate about something. So if you'd like to make a point, can you please make it?
I am Mr. Price, and all due respect to you, these gentlemen made comments today that I'm going to dispute right now. May I?
Yeah, Tread.
Thank you. Also, you made a comment about repairing the doors. Was the doors replacements also in this report?
I don't have a report.
I can save you the time, it was. Okay, so
So again, Mr. Palladori, we did discuss when you were given the liberty to speak that that was not part of what was the discussion. It was made clear, and then you are going to. So one more time, and we're going to not have you speak.
Mr. Price, when you have a gentleman up here that's going to increase the cost because of his personal opinion, and it's already included, I think I have the right to dispute that. Okay, regardless of any additions that may have somehow occurred, I am requesting that the board, again, take this to a vote, put it on the agenda, and whatever does happen, happens. In addition to that, I have an additional analysis of the cost of operations. I'm not going to give it out now, I'll give it out later. I want you to read it. And I know that Mr. Haskin had looked at it, Mr. Steffi had looked at it. We didn't agree on everything, but I would love to see that report with data, not a line item, with data that will actually offer support for their numbers. I have support for my numbers. I'm going to distribute it to everybody, and we'll make it a fair fight. If we win, we win, we lose, we lose. But do not keep pushing this back. Have the vote. These people have other programs to run. There's a lot of kids programs. I know everyone here loves kids. We all do this. We all do it for kids, whether it's swimming, baseball, whatever else we're going to be doing. Get this over with, make a decision, and move forward. In addition, if you plan on repurposing that pool at Schaefer, has anyone looked into a comparison between new construction and then the demo of the pool and building an entire classroom complex inside of a structure? Before you make that decision to repurpose that pool, to put 5, 10, 20 classrooms inside the pool area, that place has to be demoed. And then you have to bring equipment in inside the building, unless you can really tear it all down and start from scratch, which is a ridiculous idea. We've done this too many times. If you're going to repurpose the pool versus new construction, I think that should be a big part of any decision made for that pool, because if it costs more to build that, to retrofit or reconstruct that pool, then you're tearing down a pool that the community uses. It does everything. And the amount of money that that pool costs per year is far from that number that you guys are looking at.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me ask a question. I always say, you ask me something about tennis, I know everything about it. But with swimming, I don't. What happens if can we just open the pool without this extensive, HVAC work? I mean,
That's a
Well,
great
can I
question,
pre-
Mr.
can I
Cohen.
can I preface?
Mark, even I don't think we
Mark,
can
can
do
I
that because
preface
we
that?
had that error.
We'd have to know what Mr. Palladori's expertise is in the industry to be able to answer that question. And if he doesn't have expertise
answer
in that industry, he
to-
can't answer that question with any
To the other
knowledge.
gentleman, too. I mean,
No,
that's
but
just a
Mark,
blanket-
even I'm a big pool supporter along with you, but we had that air quality report right before COVID, and that's the reason we closed it. So we would have to make the repairs. There was a different expert report we got.
It's
So
a safety hazard.
it's a-
And can
that-
we, is now with that COVID money, can we use some of that for that type of program, you know?
Yes,
for
we
that
can.
type of
Mr.
repair?
Steffi was clear about that last time. Yes, we can.
You can, but right now you have your COVID money already targeted for other purposes.
Unless the board voted
The
otherwise.
board wants to change what you want to use it for.
But it is permissible under the grant.
It is permissible under the grant.
May I answer, Mr. Cohen? Mr. Cohen, the pool was operational before it was drained. The pool was fully operational before it was drained. There were 2 comments the last time I was here about air quality in the pool. Now, unless the 2 gentlemen that made the comments about air quality are experts, then someone needs to show us why there's an air quality issue. Okay, that pool could be turned on, operational, in the event that the high school pool cannot be repaired in time. That's what you would use, and you would figure that out. I don't know if there's a cost to.
We should, can we, I mean, John, really, I do believe there's an air quality report by a professional, but I think it's buried somewhere back in board docs. I tell you, for something else, I spent hours trying to find stuff and going back through stuff. Could we repost it?
Can, we- well. can
Could we
it
repost
wasn't
it?
an actual report. It was an opinion that there are not.
Wait a minute,
air
I thought we got a
exchange-
report.
I'm
We got
pretty
a
sure we
report
did.
from ICS that area, and we also talked to Mr. Wallover, if you don't have a functional rooftop unit doing air exchanges in that area, in a chlorinated pool area, it is not a safe environment. I mean, I would ask Mr. Carl and Mr. Wallover to opine on this, but everything we've heard from every expert is that it is not a safe environment if you don't have an operational HVAC unit.
Building code requires a certain number of air changes per hour. The units that are in there now, to the best of my knowledge, are not capable of doing that. They're not functional. And the idea of opening doors and putting fans and things of that nature is absolutely inappropriate. We have a situation now with these kids, and especially with the COVID situation, if you are not bringing the right air changes in, if you are not filtering the air properly, or if you're not treating the air properly, all of our high school pools that we're doing now all have bipolar ionization systems in them, which basically will kill virus. If the pool is done properly, it's probably the safest place anybody can be, with chlorine, with secondary sanitation in the water, and with proper air handling and proper air sanitation. It's a great place for kids to be. This whole argument about closing pools was just ludicrous in my opinion. But the reality of it is, without those systems in a fully functional position, I couldn't, in good conscience, recommend you to open this pool. Those air handling units must be operational. And again, we've seen so many pools where doors are open, chloramine issues out the wazoo because the kids can't breathe properly. And it's water quality, air quality, that all works together. So again, you're doing the right things in terms of trying to make those decisions to bring those systems up to par. The pool looks fine. I saw it tonight for the first time. So I'm not an expert on your Schaefer pool, but I did get a chance to see it. The shell itself looks intact. The gutter system looks to be in very good condition. It's a vacuum diatomaceous system for filtration, which is one of the best filter systems out there. So there are good positive things about the Schaefer pool, but without the air systems and without the systems being totally functional and cleaned, I couldn't recommend you to open that pool.
Thank you.
I mean, I'm just reiterating what he said. I've said the same thing before. Without the proper air changes, the chloramines in there coming off the pool, I've provided a CDC article at one point in time about what that is. I mean, it's actually human waste that attaches itself to chlorine and gets released into the air and hovers at the top of the pool. I mean, is that something you really want your kids breathing in? No. My kids are swimmers. They're competitive swimmers. I'd like to see swimming pools open everywhere, but I would never recommend opening that pool without the proper ventilation system. And that's the bottom line. So I'm in total agreement, and it's what I've said 2 years ago, and it's in that report as well.
Thank you.
I think thank you both. I think the difference in terminology is, I thought we had an actual air quality report, and now I understand, Mr. Steffi, you're referring to Mr. Eisler's report, which is an opinion, but
Mr. Carl.
It's ICS.
Forgive me.
That's okay. I work for ICS.
I'm sorry. But it was we didn't get an actual air quality test.
Correct. It was
Okay.
it was our professional's opinion that based on the lack of air exchanges, it was not a safe environment for our children.
Okay. It's just important to
Oliver
clarify
is-
for the public. I think that's what Mr. Polidor is saying. There wasn't an actual test, but we have expert opinions, and that's the difference.
One
Okay.
last thing. The way your pool's designed, it's a recessed deck level gutter. And so you have about 8 to 10, 12 inches of free air before the deck. So that's water, a 10-inch space. And was mentioned, the chloramines are heavier than air. They settle at the top of the water. So when a kid's taking a breath, his head's coming out and they're getting hit with that heavy chlorine content. Now, UV and the Clear Comfort hydroxyl radical, both of those systems can mitigate that. But it's still a function of air changes. It's getting the air moving through the space and getting that bubble of chloramine off the water so the kids are breathing clean air. And that's really critical.
It's okay. I did think that a repair is necessary. I understood that part, but I think there was just a little misunderstanding as to what reports specifically we had.
Okay, so we're going to move on then? Okay, so then we will
And
have
there's
this-
moving a vote to June.
We're moving a vote to
23rd.
June.
As long as
But
we
we
have the
w-
data to do that. We need information from these guys with cost.
No, we have approximate cost. It's a
Well-
question if you want to spend any
No,
money or
what-
not.
I mean, Mr. Price is right. You're not going to, what we're going to do is move forward with the design to get you costs, because ultimately, you're going to have to approve the repairs.
No, I
So-
understand that, but in June, the vote would be, are we interested in moving forward? Right.
Well, I would like to know the exact cost to move forward,
Yes, that's what we're doing. So what we would do is, the June
like any other
23rd
repair we do. We want to know the exact cost to move forward.
So the June 23rd meeting would be to engage design professionals to assist the district with the scope of work, the design of the repairs, and then we would bring
Wait.
back to the board after,
Didn't we already do that?
no,
We've never done that.
never done that.
But we had an estimate at some point that the part cost X number of dollars. We did have that,
We have
didn't
an
we?
estimate of what it
It was a
cost 2 years ago, but that's
2019
not awarding the
assessment.
work either.
No. All right, so we did have an estimate 2 years ago. So we add 40% to it, and we can have enough of an understanding of what we're talking about, even though it wouldn't be precise. I mean, just for
No, I work-
purposes.
Mr. Steffi, do you think that by our next voting meeting on the 23rd that we could have that information? Is that possible?
That next voting meeting, my motion would be to engage a design professional to get that information to you.
But we'd have to pay a design professional to do that.
Yes, we will
That's
have
why I'm saying-
proposals for that work.
Yes, and that's why I'm saying, for purposes of the discussion that really needs to be had, do we want to deal with this or not? Lop on an extra 40 or 50%, and then it's enough of a ballpark, because I'm sure there's board members who are going to want to spend it up to what, some number, and there's going to be board members who say, I don't want to spend it at all.
Now, I'm not comfortable doing that. We didn't do that for the track, and we shouldn't do it for the pool.
I don't
I
even
want to
know. I
know,
mean,
I want to know figures. I want to know figures.
And I don't even
Because
know.
you could add 40% on, and then there could be more cost on top of that, once they get in there and start to find out what's wrong.
Right,
So
but Ms.
I-
Rivera, you could do it like negotiating, right? You can give,
I'm not,
if I
am
could.
not, Mrs. Hernandez, I am not comfortable doing that. I am comfortable with what Mr. Steffi is saying, that we get somebody in and get us figures.
It's like anything else we pay for. You can give a range. The board would go up to X dollars. If it can get done, it can get done. If it can't, it can't.
Well, the first thing is we would have to, once you say that, we'd have to go and get those prices and then petition PDE with the 3 price quotes to see if they would even allow us to bypass the bidding process. And we'd have to contact your solicitor to see if you can pre-approve a purchase without even knowing who the vendor and/or price is, which I seriously doubt you can pre-approve something without knowing who it is and how much it is.
What is the turnaround time that we're currently looking at if we were to go ahead and put out these bids?
Again, I mean, I think there's a lot of unknowns. Mr. Price mentioned the lead time. Mr. Wallover did too. I mean, we're having lead times in a lot of different areas. We don't know if we will get PD approval. We're hopeful, but that's not a guarantee. So there's a lot of unknowns, but I think an optimistic viewpoint is the January, and it could even be longer.
So we're not talking this year, is essentially what you're saying.
Not 2021, I don't believe so, but
So by deferring until we have the exact numbers, there's a number of things we spend money to go out and get. We can have the conceptual discussion. If it's important to the community to at least get a yay or nay, we can have the conceptual discussion. Again, we just earlier this week, right? We authorized, well, not this week, but we've authorized ranges before and other topics. So we can address the concept in general, because I know there's board members who feel one way and there's board members who feel another way. There may not even be 5 board members who want to explore the concept.
again, I would just defer to your solicitor and let him give an opinion on whether or not it's permissible to pre-approve an unknown vendor and an amount.
If we don't have 5 board members who even want to talk about it, there's no need to spend spend attorney dollars on our solicitor. That's what I'm saying. We may not have 5 board members who even want to talk about it. I don't know. There's not that many here tonight.
I still go back to, is this COVID, we're hearing now, and it's not, I think it's pretty factual that, like, for instance, these plexiglass situations were, not as effective, if not a problem. And now we're, with the air, is this really totally needed? As Mr. Paladera and they feel that this is just too much here, that if we could just temporarily get the water in there and
Mr. Cohen, we just had 2 professionals tell us
but
that it's.
they're not like CDC, they're not like complete experts at this too.
They
And
are
I'm
experts
I'm
at.
thinking, some of this is, with the COVID driven, you know what I mean? And this is my point, just as plexiglass is now, we're turning out.
Okay, first of all, this was an issue, it was in the report, what was it, 2 years ago? At this point in time? It is an issue. We've known it was an issue. It has nothing to do with COVID, non-COVID. It was an issue before COVID, well, before this particular type of COVID, because if you've been following, there's more than, like, the flu is a type of coronavirus, but that's a different topic. But I'm so over all of it. Yeah, taking the long road, but I'm getting there. It is an issue. We have never questioned it. I know people want to see the pool. I know there's some people that don't. I don't want to speak for you, Ms. Fernandez, but by saying tack on 40% to the cost, were you saying that as a guide, like, say it was going to cost, I'm going to go with really low numbers, but if it was going to cost $100, we're going to figure it's $140. Would you be willing to pay $140? And if people say no, then it's a non-issue. If people say yes, then we can, if we could fix the pool for $140, I'd just write the check and be done with it.
I just want to circle back to a couple things, and maybe this will offer some clarity to those here and those playing at home. Mr. Fanini already said that he had, reached out to somebody to bring in some numbers. It is of my opinion that those numbers that individual he's talked to could potentially be enough to drive a decision to move to the process to have it repaired by the end of the month.
I'm
Well,
in
yes,
agreement with that. Is that accurate, Mr. Fanini?
And while Mr. Fanini's getting to a mic, yes, Mrs. Nicholas, I agree with you, Mrs. Nicholas. Your restatement of what I said. How many times is that tonight? Yes, that's what I'm saying. We can figure it out. 140, we're in. If not, we're not. Enough to have the conceptual discussion.
We're referring to the high school pool, correct? We're referring to the high school pool at this point?
Schaefer Pool.
That's what I
Did
thought.
you have
Mr.
somebody coming out for, you had somebody coming out for the high school or for Schaefer?
The high school only. I can work on Schaefer and get some
I think if
numbers.
there's a way that we could potentially get a rough idea by the June meeting, it could potentially guide us in our decision to yay or nay or move it forward in that process. But without some type of rough idea numbers, I think without going through the whole process of what John said, it's going to be near impossible to not do that and not have figures,
Well,
because then we wouldn't know what we're talking about.
Couldn't ICS just update their figures? Thank you, Mr. Mann. Yeah. Okay, well, there you go. Wait a minute. Public can't hear you, Mr. Matthew. Got to
John?
push a button.
Yeah, Mr. Carl said, from ICS, said for rooftop units around $450,000. An additional $100,000 for other stuff in there.
I'm sorry, I just repeat what I said before, but basically, yeah, we had a budget of 250 for just the rooftop previously. So with the current conditions, we're adding another 100 to 150,000. So say roughly 400,000 for the rooftop repairs. Add another 100,000 for all the miscellaneous stuff around the pool, grouting, door frames. There were some plumbing issues, miscellaneous repairs, just a refresh. So you're looking at a range between $450,000 and $500,000.
And that's based on the current trends.
That's based on current trends and the market right now. And we could go back and refresh it and take a closer look for you, no problem. But that gets you a ballpark.
If we could take a closer look at it, I think that would be helpful.
Sure, we'll do that.
I
for you.
agree.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barry.
So then I think, Mr. Steffi, that's the direction that we would like to go and get a more tighter figure, and then put it to the board whether or not we're agreeable in moving forward with that.
Okay,
I agree with that.
okay. Ms. Rivera? Okay. I guess
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, moving on, moving on. Okay, next item, again, jumping around on our agenda, is going to be the high school rooftop units. We have two proposals. ICS is here. We're going to have them go first since they're in the room. So we're going to have a short presentation by each firm, followed by a few minutes of questions. And then we want to get a recommendation from the committee on who they would like to go with.
John, what section's that?
So again, I'm Barry Carl with
3.03.
Barry Carl with ICS. My colleague here, Tim Guider, is handing out the presentation. To be respectful of time, I'm going to try and keep it as short as possible. Mr. Steffi asked me to keep it under 5 minutes originally, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on all these slides, but I'm going to try and get the point across. So if we look at the agenda, we're going to just talk about why we need this. We're going to talk about choosing a professional service partner, why you should choose us, and then what our fees look like. So page 3, high school gym HVAC renovations, why? Anybody that's been close to these units and knows what's going on in the history understands that there's a significant need. There's extensive problems. There's been ongoing issues with the units. One of the units doesn't even cool, and they need to be replaced, basically, is what it comes down to. Not only replaced, but they need to be redesigned and re-engineered to be able to dehumidify so you don't have the problems that you have today in that space. Is there any questions as to why you need this work done. Nope. So, choosing a professional service partner, myself and ICS, our team views this as a long-term relationship. We see this as a partnership. We've been in the district, I've been working in the district now for some time, and we take pride in our work. We're doing what makes sense for you, and we're always looking out for you. And that's what you should see and look for in a partner. We've had extensive experience going through all your buildings. We know your systems better than anybody. We've just completed the master facility planning workbook that outlines all your projects and puts the critical projects up front, along with budgeting of those. So honestly, there's nobody else better for you to choose than us. And that's truly how I feel about it. Both Tim and I have worked in this district all the way dating back to the energy performance contract, which was 5 years ago. We implemented that project, saving the district's millions of dollars in future energy costs. So we've been a partner for a long time. Why choose us? I mean, we do what makes sense. We're not trying to over-engineer systems, do anything unneeded. We thoroughly investigate our systems and designs to try and minimize change orders. We maintain an open, honest communication line throughout the process with the entire administration and district personnel. And there's extensive work to be done on this RTU project. It's not a simple project. This is probably one of the more complicated systems in your district. I mean, it needs to be able to ramp up to serve thousands, to have a great deal of people in there with a lot of CO2 versus ramping all the way down to just serve your lobby space. So there's special sequences that need to be in place that we're more than familiar with in implementing. Our idea here and the way that we'd like to see this go and move on into the future with the district is to enter into a 2-year fee agreement, basically guaranteeing you a low rate for our services within the term. And I'll get into some key points of that, but if we do that, we're able to get lower on this job and stay lower for the future projects that we do with you. Really a 2-year agreement, and it would be for mechanical, electrical, and plumbing services along with construction management, similar to the services that we've been doing for you on the other projects. Our fee for this particular project, we've submitted something before. We've come down from that number today. If we can, put a 2-year agreement in place, the total fee would be $114,826. This total project is budgeted with the professional services at roughly $1.6 million. Historically, our budgeting has been within plus or minus 5%. So we've done a good job at budgeting these projects, and we've done a concise budget on this particular system. So we feel that that budget is accurate as of today's conditions. Really, the 2-year agreement and the key points of this, you're getting low fees with the partner that you trust. And really, it's really important that you know that you can break this agreement for any reason. If you're not happy with us, you're not locked in to use us for the next 2 years. This is just putting something in place so that we know that we're partners and you want to work with us basically over the term of the agreement. We're committed to you for the term, for the project that district can do. So we're not telling you have to do projects. It's just what you agree that you can afford in that term. We can do those projects. Without the agreement, they go back up to a market rate and you pay more. So really, we want to be your partners, and that's what it comes down to. That's basically it. We have other slides that show industry standards that we'd certainly like to provide to the administration at some point to support what our fees are. And is there any questions? Well, if there isn't any questions, I certainly appreciate your time. It's good to be here. Like you said earlier, you know some of the things I've gone through these past 6 months, and I'm certainly happy to be here with you and try to help you out on your future projects.
Bear, I got a question. I mean, you've been working with the district a long time, right?
Yep.
You know, you've been pretty accessible for our needs and everything and been pretty responsive. John, is that accurate?
Right. I often get comments from my team that I might spend too much time here. So, but yeah, I'm always here, and I'm always trying to help.
Barry,
Yes.
it's great to see you.
Thanks. Thanks, Dr. Lee. I appreciate it.
Thanks for being with us tonight. Could you walk us down, walk us through page 7 real quick?
Yep.
With the specific level of attention to the 2-year agreement. That's included in these numbers?
Yeah, so the 2-year agreement, the agreement will be based off of a fee structure that's based off of project budgeted costs. So this is a snapshot after the agreement, essentially. So this is what this project, and we would be, for this project of this range, we'd be in that 7.52% range total for everything. If you see that 7.52%. So our engineering and design is 4.2%, RFP and bidding management 0.07, structural engineering 0.53, construction administration 0.2. So really that first part of it is the upfront work, the design, everything you need to do to get the project kicked off and started, and then into construction. The construction management piece is the next piece, which is 2.52%. Those rates, and you'll find if you do the research and we show you the research, they're well below what industry standard is, and we have the data to support that. So what this snapshot is if we have a 2-year agreement in place, and to be honest with you, we'll honor this whether we have it or not for this job, but this is what you get with that agreement. You get low rates, and you get our services. So is there any questions around that, or do we?
Thank you. Just one. The
Yep.
agreement is separate from what's cited on page 7.
The agreement would be separate. Yeah, we'd have to work through that in the coming month or two. We don't need that to proceed with this job specifically, but we'd like to see that in place as a partnership, and you're guaranteed those fees then. You're guaranteed. And as the range, say the project is $3 million, it's tiered, so you actually pay less at that point. So you know what you're getting, you know the services you're going to get. We'll spell out what each of these buckets are, and we'll spell out those ranges and sit down with you and say, make sure that we're all comfortable with it. It really just puts us both in a good position.
So this is, I'm sorry, Sam, go.
I was going to say thank you.
Okay, so I need to wrap my head around this. So basically what you're proposing is an exclusivity agreement for 2 years for certain types of services?
It's an exclusivity agreement for 2 years, yes, but you can break it for any reason. So what we're saying is we'd like to set up this agreement, and as long as you're happy with us and we're providing these services within these dollar figures for budgeted costs, then you're going to use us for those types of services.
And there's a cost to the exclusivity agreement?
There's no cost to the agreement. The agreement would be put in place, and we understand that we're going to pay this amount for these types of services in this project range. We will always do the same thing, a budget, the scoping of it, and everything that we normally do, but you know what to expect our costs to be at that point, and we won't be shopped out, essentially. So, we're your partner. We agree that we're going to get low for these types of services, and you know what you're going to pay. So it won't be a question moving forward like maybe it was for Mr. Steffi for this particular job. And to be honest, so what I'm saying is without the agreement in place, this particular job was 30% roughly higher, or I'm sorry, what was it? It was about 15% higher.
And
So
where's that number? I'm sorry. Is
That
that
was-
the 1.6 versus the 1.5?
No, so our services for this job were 114, we're saying are 114,826. So that would be our fee for this particular job. A month ago, we provided another quote, and it was roughly 135,000.
I see.
So what we're saying is, if we can put a 2-year agreement, we can have agreement in place that we are your partners moving forward, we can get down lower and on every job. And, you know, it's a win-win for both of us, really, is what I feel. And, go ahead.
And we're permitted to have exclusivity agreements that comports with our requirements to get bids and all those
For a
things?
professional services agreement, you could do that.
And this is not a question for you, but
Yep.
Mrs. Nicholas might be able to answer this, but why in the world, maybe I've missed it, but isn't the high school gym new-ish?
10 years.
10 years already?
Yeah. It is 10 years, and the big portion are 1, 2, 3, 4. The fifth bullet down is a large driver as to why we have had the issues that we have had. There was some litigation that portion of the gym has been a nightmare.
Yeah, so we're jumping back now to page 3 of the presentation as
Right.
to the why. There has been a significant history of problems. There was litigation, to my understanding. The rooftops were put together on the ground on a slant. There is caulk going down the seams. There's actually a gutter on this rooftop that you'd put on your house to try and keep rainwater from coming in. I mean, it was absolutely, some of this stuff is just ridiculous. And you are not getting any support. The unit was manufactured overseas in Israel. So, and that company has refused to give me any information on the unit. We can't buy parts for it. It's not functioning. I mean, one of the coils is broken. The energy wheels don't work. They're a nightmare. And your gym floor, I mean, John can speak to it, but your gym floor basically expands and contracts with the outside air. There's no dehumidification in that area. And our solution will solve all that.
So
for
we're
this
fixing
unit.
a screw up.
We're fixing the screw up, yeah. Absolutely.
There was a settlement agreement with the district and the vendor, I don't know, five years
This
ago?
is before your time.
Yeah.
Long before my time, yes. Oh, the settlement.
It
Well, you know how
took
much we
forever
got
to
from
go
them?
through that, so it was.
It was,
Carrying it on the books?
it was several hundred thousand, I think 200,000 to 300,000.
Not enough.
Any other, it is early to be, it shouldn't be 10 years and you're replacing it, but it's extenuating circumstances there with that unit, those 4 units, I should say, so. Are there any other questions regarding that as to the why? No. Any other questions at all? Otherwise, thank you so much for your time.
Wait, I'm sorry, real quick. So you would present a contract for our solicitor to review some type of an agreement or a 2-year agreement. Do we have?
We don't,
when
we don't
would
have
that-
that yet. We would present that and we'd work through that.
You're just giving us the heads up.
I'm giving you the heads up that we feel it's the best solution moving forward for both of us, for ICS and the district. And it gets you these lower fees, and we're your partner. Anything else? Oh, thank you again.
Thank you, and thank you for your help with the pool, Barry, I appreciate that. Next up is Mr. Damian Spar with SiteLogic. an engineering firm that has done a lot of work in Bucks County school districts.
And Damien right now is providing a handout, just a couple pages. My name is David Hickey. I'm the Director of Engineering for SiteLogic East, and appreciate the opportunity to meet with you this evening. I understand you went over a few of the details with ICS about this project earlier, so I'll try not to be redundant. The first page of the handout is a few photographs of the existing equipment that was discussed. Hopefully we have enough copies. The left-hand picture is 2 of the 4 rooftop units serving the gym, and the right-hand picture is a air-cooled chiller that serves those units. Essentially, the chiller generates the chill water. It's distributed with pumps that are downstairs and serves just these 4 air handlers. As was mentioned, the energy recovery wheels are not performing. Ventilation for that space is a problem, and particularly dehumidification. When we were originally brought in to look at the project, we understood that this was the intent to replace in kind. In talking to the facilities personnel, Mr. Matthews was kind enough to meet with us. We understand that there are some other considerations for maybe some alternative systems. So I'll get into that as we go through these few pages. The second page would be what we refer to as replacement units for the base proposal. So one of the key things that you're looking for with any replacement units is units that you don't have the water infiltration that you're dealing with now. You may have noticed on the first page some gutters on rooftop units with what looks to be downspout material. That is not something that we normally see on HVAC equipment on roofs. So with any of the manufacturers, we would consider Carrier being one that was mentioned that the district would have a preference for. We would have the type of unit construction that would not be an issue. In fact, in our commissioning services, we deal with a lot of building envelope consultants, particularly on hospital work, who do water penetration testing. That would be the sort of test that would actually be beneficial whichever direction you go with your new equipment. That way you know once it's installed, hey, if we're going to put a high pressure water stream against these cabinets and simulate a wind-driven rain condition, we'll know before we have that event, and while the contractor's still obligated, that we know we've got a watertight system. So that's just something to consider as you go forward. But whatever manufacturer we would propose would be a domestic manufacturer. There's a lot of good options. And again, with the base proposal, it would be the same manufacturer for both your air handlers and your chiller. So again, in the interest of time, I just want to go through 2 more handout pages. As far as an alternative system, so right now, essentially what you do is you utilize chill water with a coil in the air handlers to remove the water from the airstream, both any humidity in the space, but more so the humidity that comes with the outside air, which in the mid-Atlantic region for any time of year from early spring to late fall can be a pretty high dehumidification load. And then you count on hot water coils in the form of reheat to basically do the sensible heating so you don't overcool the space. With the alternative system, we would actually eliminate the chiller, have package cooling in each of the rooftop units, and then those package heating systems would have a hot gas reheat coil. Essentially, your home air conditioner, you've got a unit outside that rejects the heat outside from that refrigeration cycle. The hot gas reheat coil would actually put that back into the airstream. It's most commonly used on pool units, but it's a very effective way on large zone systems to get energy recovered refrigeration heat rather than using boiler hot water. So this would be a nice alternative to look at. And we followed up with another proposal to Mr. Steffi where we would actually investigate this probably for a 2-week period to look at your base option and also this alternative system, both from a operational costs and an installation cost issue perspective, and then you could to see how they compare for life cycle costs. And then the last page is kind of an enhancement of that last unit. And again, talking with the service personnel, Rich and Brian, who both seem very familiar with these units, I mentioned to them that some of the rooftop manufacturers now and we've dealt with this on some of the hospital systems we've worked on. They have a walk-in vestibule for the refrigeration equipment. So again, you're looking at replacing equipment that you've gotten 10 to 12 years out of. Hopefully you can at least double that, if not look at systems that you can get 25 to 30 years out of. And this is just a means of getting those compressors in a conditioned space. They're not subject to the elements, and obviously you're going to reap the benefits of longer lasting equipment. So I wanted to focus on kind of our technical approach tonight. Obviously we've only gotten to the stage of doing a walkthrough. We haven't done any type of extensive engineering analysis, but I at least wanted to share with you some of our thoughts on how we would address dealing with your base proposal, and if we were given the opportunity, looking at an alternative which might be in your best interest. So, any questions?
Yeah, just a quick question. I mean, we've been working with the other group for a while. How'd you become involved with this project?
I believe Mr. Steffi and Damian Spar had worked together on previous projects, and we were asked to look at the scope of the project and offer an engineering fee. And then after we submitted that initial proposal, then I had a meeting with Mr. Matthews and some of the facilities personnel, and that's where the idea of doing a study to look at a couple options was proposed.
On the proposed dollar amount, I don't have I'm doing it from Zoom, so I don't have a packet in front of me.
Thank you.
Is there,
Yeah,
was
so,
there a?
I mean,
a-
your proposal contains no dollar figures. Is there any supplemental that has?
Oh, this handout? Yeah, as far as our proposal fee, we had a design fee. I don't remember the exact number. I think it was in the $83,000 range. We noticed that the competitive proposal didn't have looking at any alternative systems, but it did say that that could be done on an hourly rate. So our intention was for the study portion, that would be an additional cost of $8,000, not the exact dollar amount, but it's essentially $8,000.
So we're looking at, what, about 88, 90,000?
I think it was a little over 90, probably 83 plus 8. I apologize for not having the exact figures in front
No,
of me.
those, you're very, yeah, it was around 82 to 83, and then your alternate proposal, I think, was between 8 and 9.
So we're looking at about 92, 93.
That sounds right. And we tried to mirror the services that were being offered in the other proposal you had previously received.
It's probably important to note that when we were asked to do this, we said, well, can you give us an idea of everything that you're looking at? So we talked to Mr. Steffi about the scope of work and was there a study needed, et cetera. And we effectively got a very little bit of information. And David referenced that there was a note that we were aware of in the other proposal that said a study could be done, but we didn't even offer that up front without talking to staff. When we develop our proposals, we develop them based on a level of effort. That means everybody that works on the job has a certain hourly rate. We figure out how many hours it takes to do the job. We calculate the hourly rates, times, and we get a fee. It isn't based on the cost of construction times a percentage of construction. And it's not, especially these days, because construction costs are outrageous. And so when we do a level of effort fee, it isn't, I can't even tell you what the percentage is, but I can tell you that when we do these fees, as we do for everyone, because we don't do our fees based on percentages, when we do those fees for engineering projects, we hold to our number because it's a lump sum and we finish everything that we need to for that fee amount.
So can I just understand something real here? A lot of times when you have stuff done, there are change sheets because people will estimate what they believe to be the hourly cost, and then they open that can and it changes. So are you just saying that when you open that can and it changes, you're going to eat that cost?
So again, we'll do it on a lump sum engineering fee instead of an hourly fee. So I believe I heard that the project budget at this point is somewhere in the vicinity of 1.6 million. We would want to, we haven't looked at your actual construction costs, but as part of the study, we would identify what we would estimate as a range of probable costs for the base proposal and the alternate proposal. But again, whichever route was pursued, that wouldn't change our engineering fees.
So let me just clarify it one more time, and maybe I can get it a little bit down a little bit. If from what I'm hearing is correct, and you don't do a lump sum fee, all inclusive, you have a formula that factors into it, and you use what?
We do a lump sum.
Yeah,
fee. This is
it's a lump sum
fee.
engineering fee. So
Well, I think what I was saying was, when we figure out our level of effort, our hours times our rates, we come up with that lump sum, and we hold to that. So that, I think that was what you were hoping to hear, yes.
So what I'm understanding is, during your calculation, you come up with an hour's rate of what it would take to do the job,
Yeah.
and that's your proposal.
That's it.
So from that aspect of that job, if those hours exceed that time, there's no cost to the district.
I don't remember the last time I went to a district and asked them for more money on something like this. So, yes, I would say that's correct. You can think of extraordinary things that could happen. Does the contractor cause something to go wrong, et cetera? We would write in the specifications that if the contractor causes delay, contractor is going to have the fee for any additional engineering time taken out of their costs. So they wouldn't get paid for that; they'd be back charged. But I don't even remember us having to do that. So I can't think of times when we're coming back and saying, "You've called us to another meeting, and our hand is out." That's not how we do business.
I just can't get my head wrapped around that, because every single contractor that has done work for the district and or for, let me speak of myself for a personal matter, that hasn't got into something and it's changed outside of what they've expected and not submitted a change sheet. So to hear an organization say we don't do that, to me that would be outside the norm.
Well, I appreciate that, and I hope that we are outside of the norm.
And frankly, unbelievable.
That will be spelled out in your contract and your
yeah,
agreement.
so the
with us.
proposal we provided had an outline of services. And again, all of the services that we outlined would be included in that fee. And I think that mirrored the services that were in the initial proposal from the other firm.
I was just going to ask that. Is that, would that be in the contract?
Yeah, so essentially, the services that we wrote in that proposal would be the basis of the contract. That'd be the intent.
Any other questions? Okay, well, we're going to discuss it amongst our committee, and then we'll go back to both firms.
Very good. Thank you again for having us.
I'd like to give some background on how this whole process worked. We've worked with ICS for, I think, 4 or 5 projects now. And we've had great experience. Barry Carl is is fantastic. We haven't even gone out to look at other firms until this project. All of our projects had come in at, in my opinion, and even talking to Mr. Matthew, at reasonable prices. So we didn't feel the need to go out and secure other pricing. When we got the pricing for this high school project, it was, in my opinion, very, very high and outside the norm for what we had received for other projects. Our original proposal was at $160,000. I contacted Mr. Carl and I said, Barry, this is so much more than what our board has been used to seeing. Is there any movement in your number? Or what we're going to do is we're going to recommend that we go out and I'm going to go out and get other proposals. So Mr. Carl said, let me talk to other people in the firm and get back to you. And he came back to us and said that, no, that was their number. I said, well, okay, then I had a question to ask him. I said, would you mind if I use your proposal? I'm going to white out all of your pricing and use that as a scope of work to get another proposal. He said, that's fine, you can do that. I thanked him for that. And then that's when we contact SiteLogic. Their price came in at approximately 50% of what the ICS proposal. At that point, I called Barry up. I said, you know what? We'd like to work with you. We want to work with you. I said, the proposal that we got is so much lower. I said, I'm going to give you a last best chance. I'm not going to tell you their number, but if you want to revise your number, please come back with your new number. And he came back with a new number at $139,000. Now, the number that was the SiteLogic number was on the board report. So Barry knows that they were still considerably higher at 139, and they've come back at 114,000, which is still much higher.
See, this goes to, this is like a sales here, and then I get into the pool here, I don't know.
I think both, Barry is a
Not
proven
happy.
commodity.
Yeah.
SiteLogic has a great reputation, having worked with a large number of school districts in Pennsylvania. So that's why we brought them in for comparative purposes. I thought it was doing our due diligence. Like I said, if that number would have been lower, we would have not even ventured out to get another price because we really like working with Barry. I think he's great.
I'm glad you did that to
Yeah.
get another
But
estimate.
again, I think we have to
See,
do our
now,
due diligence and get other pricing.
I see
And
where this is going here.
the other thing I don't like is I agree with Mr. Spar as far as pricing based on percentage of project. I think it has to be related to the extent of the work. If pricing goes up in the market because materials are much more expensive, well, it shouldn't be reflected in the design cost. If you're designing a macadam parking lot that's 2 football fields long, there's not going to be a whole lot of design work, and you shouldn't base that design fee based on a huge parking lot. It should be on the level of work. So that's the other issue, and I discussed that with Barry. I said, I don't agree with percentage of a contract pricing. So that's the reason why we're here tonight, to discuss these two different firms. Like I said, if the ICS proposal was where they're at today, probably wouldn't even have had this discussion. But when we first got it, it was at $160,000, which I said, this is more than double any of the other fees that we've received from you. So it's not that we're unhappy with ICS, it just seemed that that fee was unreasonably high.
Did they provide any feedback as to why that was the case?
He said it's a very complicated project. It's much more complicated, and I believe that. But again, when he mentioned that they based it on the percentage of the cost of the job, I don't agree with that methodology of determining costs for their fees. I mean, if, like everybody's saying, the cost of materials is going up 30 or 40%, and that shouldn't reflect in the cost of their design fees, because they're not doing 30 or 40% more work if the cost of the materials go up 30 or 40%. They're going to do the same amount of work. We shouldn't have to pay more because materials cost more. And that's just the way I looked at it.
I would love to know the other school districts they worked for, SiteLogic, and see if what they said hold true, and they never submitted a change sheet.
I can get the listed of districts they work in, and we can contact them.
If,
We're gonna have Ms. Shaw, I mean, she's our purchasing clerk, contact them for references.
if we were to move forward with Site Logic, could we make sure that that is firmed up? Because that would also be a concern for me as well, that it's written in the contract and that we have it reviewed by our solicitor.
Definitely.
Other than the fact that it kind of bothered me when he said that he saw the competitive proposal, that didn't sit well. But other than that, the fact that ICS knows our system, so if they're going to say it's complicated, they know what they're getting into. Because what was it, 5 years that I know they've been here for a while. But they have a better understanding of what is needed. So if he said it's because it's more complicated, and I'm not, just to be clear, I'm not a member of this committee, but if the committee decides to send Site Logic a breakdown of fees as was presented to us from ICS would be much appreciated before the board vote, because all we got was, to me, a brochure and some pictures of our roof.
I do have, and just, I wanted,
My students do better jobs than that.
the proposal, they did not, I mean, like I said earlier, I asked Mr. Carl prior to forwarding the proposal, and the proposal did not have any of ICS's numbers. So they didn't have the cost from ICS, they had the scope of work. And I checked with Mr. Carl, I said, we're gonna have questions for this high a design fee. Are you okay with me? I would white out the figures, which I did, sharing that and getting another, he said he was fine with that. So I checked with Mr. Carl to take his scope of work for the design before we sent that out.
Okay, I may have misunderstood, because I thought he said that they knew they were coming in below.
No, he
That's what-
did not say, they did not have the numbers.
Did they not do a walkthrough?
They did.
So could they not have figured out an estimate based on their walkthrough?
We do have an estimate. Their estimate is approximately $82,000, between 82 and 83.
So then
I
from
have that.
So then from that estimate though, could we have a breakdown as to what the actual cost will be?
It is broken down. It's broken down exactly the way ICS's breakdown is.
So they're.
We utilize that scope of work. And like I said, I whited out the ICS numbers, and then they filled in those figures.
So what did they get out of their walkthrough? If they used ICS's stuff, then what did they do other than take pictures of the roof?
Well, they said that their number was between, I have it, between 82 and 83, but they also said, in discussing the project with our two HVAC guys, Rich and Brian, that they believe that there's an alternative proposal that would better suit the district's needs and could actually possibly provide a payback to save the district over 7 to 8 years, the cost of the project.
But I'm reading into that, assuming it's probably going to be more expensive than, right.
And they kept referencing the 1.6, so.
This is a little bit different question. So in this 1.6, because it's HVAC, you're proposing we use some of the 11 million for CARES or whatever that was?
No, I would recommend that you use your capital reserve fund.
Just ballpark, what's left in capital right now?
I have, the report is here with you.
Looks like 4.7. John, is that right?
John, I'm still trying to wrap my head around the cost between the two. Did you say that the breakdown of the numbers were essentially the same?
No, I'll provide, I'll provide a side-by-side comparison.
That would be
Where
helpful.
The exact costs are side by side.
Okay, thank you.
I have to jump off, folks, so I'll wait to see the proposals. I asked Dr. Lee to grab me some of the handouts. So I don't want to make a decision until I see what I'm looking at.
Okay, so here's what I would recommend. I'll forward the proposals to the entire board, but I'll poll the committee on what their recommendation is to bring to the full board as far as firms. So, Mr. Price, Ms.
Yes.
Woods, and Ms. Rivera, we'll forward that to everybody, but then I'll take the recommendation from you guys on who to move forward.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on. So going back to the agenda, you can see we have our monthly, yearly motions. We have the senior rebates for June 2021, authorization to release accounts payable checks for July and August, authorization of salaries and wages to be paid in July and August, designation of our depositories and investment entities, which is attached, which is unchanged, our schedule of earnings and pay dates, which is just a continuation of where they're at now. And the one thing that we wanted to discuss, well, we just wanted to provide the information. Our district insurance program, you can see the history, where we're at now. 2019-20, you can see our public school district package came in at $241,000. Our auto was $129,000. Commercial umbrella was at $77,000, and student accident insurance $15,000. And the total back in 1920 was approximately $463,000. We had a pretty substantial decrease this past year to 2021 down to $436,000, and we've had a slight increase this year from the 2021, but it's still less than 1920. We're coming in at $450,778. So it's a $14,000 increase from last year, but it, like I said, it's still approximately $13,000 less than it was 2 years ago. And it's the recommendation of administration to approve Utica for our insurance packages for 21-22. Any questions? Moving on, the next item is more complicated. It's great news, but there's some options that the district has that we haven't had probably for the last 6-7 years. This is item 2.07 for our workers' comp insurance package. We've provided some historical information so you can see what's been happening over the last several years, which is fantastic news. If you even go back further, our numbers were in the 7 figures for probably 6 out of the last 7 years prior to the 1920 school year. We made a change in the 18-19 school year, and you can see that those numbers have been going down considerably. So this year, we're at $619,000 year to date. I've included something that is called the district modification factor. And this is basically an experience level of your workers' compensation. And to the left of the bolded school year, you can see 2016, 2017. That factor is based upon those 3 school years average experience. So you can see when you have a bad year, it's with you for 3 years. And when that bad year comes off, that mod goes down, and that modification number has direct correlation to what you pay in your workers' comp. We're basically semi-self-insured. We have a high deductible plan because if we wanted to go fully insured, based on our mod numbers, the last time we got a fully insured quote was back in the 18-19 school year, and it was at $1.8 million based on our mod at the time. So we weren't going to pay $1.8 million, so we went with the high deductible program. So what that means is we pay dollar for every workers' comp claim up until $200,000. And after $200,000, we're fully insured. That fully insured premium for that $200,000 excess this year cost us $365,000. That number has gone down approximately $85,000 because our mod continues to go down. So you can see at the very bottom, our options, we can go with that same $200,000 deductible for a $280,000 premium. We can lower that deductible to $150,000 at $306,000, or we can go with a $100,000 deductible at $341,000. Or, again, we have an option now. If we want to go fully insured, we can go with a fully insured plan where we don't pay anything for this year's claim, for this coming year's claims, for $503,877, which is a far cry from 3 years ago when we were at $1.8 million for that same plan. Now, that $503,000 does not include runout. And what I mean by runout is claims from prior years that are still open that we still have to pay. So our recommendation is, at this point in time, until that fully insured program, if we have another year like we had, that will go down even further. I'm recommending that we stay with the high deductible plan for at least one more year. Based on our history, I think it's going to come in lower than the 503 plus our run out. So that's what the recommendation is. There are no guarantees, but based on the changes that we've made, and again, I'd like to thank Ms. Dove. She's really been instrumental in our workers' comp program, and our new carrier has been instrumental. But I'd recommend that we stay with either the 200,000, the 150, or the 100. I'm recommending that we go to the $150,000 stop loss. We'd be at $306,000, which is approximately $60,000 less than the premium we had, and it provides greater coverage for us. So if we have a claim that is a large claim, you only pay the first $150,000 instead of the first $200,000. And for the last couple of years, we've had no claims that reached that $200,000 level.
So essentially, we'd be saving money.
We'd be saving money, yeah, and we have greater coverage.
Do you know approximately like how much money is within the run out? How many claims we still have open?
The run out isn't great. I mean, we've just settled a pretty large claim that had a reserve. They call it a reserve. That they had a reserve over $1 million. This was back with Travelers. This was back in 15, 16, or 16, 17, 17, 18. That settled for $35,000. So the run out is just an estimate. To try to determine it, it's like throwing darts at a board. But we're in much, much better shape because our claims for the last several years have been much less. You can even see that $1 million figure that we had in 18, 19, a lot of that was run out. And a lot of that is we were paying a higher premium for our stop loss. Since we've had good claims and a good mod, it's getting better. You can see our stop loss has gone down $85,000 for the same deductible amount.
Just out of curiosity, what do you think is contributing to the decrease claims that are being submitted? Are we doing something differently?
Yeah, we're getting people back to work. We're monitoring people. I mean, we've actually, our new carrier, we give them a call and say, you know what, we've heard a report that so-and-so is working at the racetrack, custodian who, they send a private investigator out to look. We have modified work duty. Mr. Frankhauser, Mr. Fanini, Mr. Matthew, they've been instrumental in helping getting our custodians back to work. We get people back to work because people get comfortable when they're at home. And the other thing is, when the way our collective bargaining agreements are, when you're on workers' comp, you get 2/3 of your salary, which basically makes you whole because it's not taxed. But they're allowed to use 1/3 of a sick day. So in effect, the person's at home, not working, and bringing more money home than they would had they gone to work. So we basically have built in, and it's not just our district, it's basically every district in Pennsylvania, but people figure out, you know what, I'm home and I'm getting more money than if I go to work. People don't want to come back to work. They beg, borrow, and steal to their doctor to say, keep me out, keep me out. But we have closely monitored. Beth works with our workers' comp carrier to closely monitor those employees. She works with our facilities department, with all the other departments to try to get modified duty to get people back to work so they're not sitting at home, and get them off the workers' comp roll. So we've taken a much more active role in managing our workers' comp, and our new carrier is very vigilant in that respect as well.
Awesome and well done. Thank you.
Thank you. So are any thoughts on the recommendation of the $150,000 deductible, or
I'm good with it, John.
go with it? Go
Same.
with it? Okay, we'll put that on the agenda for that to be approved then. Thank you. The next item, I apologize, it should not have been on here. This is part of a contractual agreement, and so that should not be there. Next item, 2.09, school meal prices. Recommendation is to keep them the same. We've listed the prices. They're unchanged from prior year, so that's the recommendation, is to maintain those prices at the current levels.
I just have a question about that. So, because for quite some time now, well, since COVID, meals have been free to everyone. So but that's been supported by, this is just clarity for the public, that's been supported by federal funds.
That's correct.
To make that happen. So those federal funds have come to an end. So starting with the next, but not for the summer, as I understand, they will be maintained through the summer. Any summer programs we have?
Yes.
Okay. And then, so this would, but starting at the new school year, late August, September, then families should expect.
I'll have to double check with you on that. They may even still continue to be free. I'm not positive. I will get that information to you and verify that. We have to set lunch prices just for federal programs, and I'm not sure if it's perfunctory or if we're actually going to be charging coming this next school year.
Yeah, I think, and I'll need to firm this up, that we're still in the same situation we have been throughout COVID. There's been I haven't seen any notice of change.
Okay, the only concern, I just want to make sure if we are going back to a situation where people
Notify.
need to pay, it's very important to notify the community, because people haven't necessarily been as diligent about getting in their free and reduced lunch applications. And we'll need to put that word out there very quickly if it's going to apply in August.
We'll
end of
get that
August.
information out to you tomorrow.
Thank you.
And families who seek to take advantage of free and reduced lunch have till September 30th to submit.
Right, it just hasn't really been needed.
Right.
So they'll have
Yep.
to know, like, okay, you have to do it. That's just a communication matter. We just want to let our families know. It would actually be good if we can, to send information home with kids last day of school. Make sure they really understand, get your applications in. Because I know that's a struggle other times for everyone to get their applications in.
So the next item, this one just came on the radar. You can see the email thread that is included in your packet from Mr. Mazzarella. He's our head mechanic who does a fantastic job for the district, and I trust his judgment implicitly. He's recommending that he saw a box truck. We have a box truck right now with no spare. It's a 2007. It's starting to have issues. He's recommending that we purchase a new box truck, keep the old one as replacement. He said, I'll read his, because I asked him, is there a problem with our current box truck? He said it's a 2007. It's starting to have issues. We have no spare truck for this or for the food truck. So if replaced, we could use this truck for the mail run, moving furniture, and bulk salt pickup. Also would be used for band trips. I'd like to keep the old one for a spare. So, I mean, if it's starting to have issues, we're going to start spending bad money for good, and it could be an issue because we have no spare for this truck.
And the box truck is what we use to help get meals out to the community, help the band do their trips, and move equipment back and forth from other schools too, right?
I thought the meals were with our buses. I mean, I know we use it for other things, but I don't think the meals.
Meals, like going to the cafeterias.
Oh, I see. Between schools. You're not talking about the community meals.
No. So if there's no question with that, we'll list this on the agenda. Okay. The next item is, we had discussed this at our last Business Affairs meeting. This was the recommendation of the committee, is to approve these income levels and the eligible rebate amount, which is reflected in that little table there. We've also requested some additional amendments to our current resolution, the resolution that was approved back in June 1976. I was talking to a colleague of mine there at Pennsbury. They're thinking of implementing this program. One thing that they're including, which I thought was a good idea, is that they must submit the state property tax refund rebate form. And the reason for that is we have trailer parks, we have homes that are assessed very low, that they could get their entire school tax bill rebated and then also get the state rebate and actually make money on, not pay any school taxes, plus make that rebate. So to avoid that, we're requiring everybody to apply to the state for the rebate, and then we would use that amount to offset what they would have to pay to the district to ensure that they're not making money, and that if they get the rebate, say their tax bill's $1,000 and they qualify for $600 with the state, we would rebate them no more than $400, so they don't reap a profit from the state and from the district. So that's what that language addresses. Any questions? Okay, so we'll have this on the agenda as well. Next up, Mr. Matthew, Mr. Fankhauser, and Mr. Fanini for facilities. I'll turn it over to them for this portion.
Are we on 3.04? Did those?
Well, we've done, I guess, well, you know what, there isn't.
We did
I'm
most-
sorry, I thought I was at rentals. I apologize. I mean, there's.
We only
So
have
we've
two
already
in
done
that we haven't
three,
touched.
1, 2, and 3. 3.04, I just wanted to give an update. I spoke to the roofing contractor. He just wanted to apprise us. They're moving forward with the roofing project the day school is out. They have more than enough workers. One thing they wanted to caution me on, they have projects that they're currently in, and there are supply chain issues. So they have people to work, but they don't have the product. They have all the roofing product. The thing that is short in supply right now is the insulation. So they stated that there are a couple of options. One option is to, and which we recommend, is to move forward with the project. If it doesn't get completed by the end of the summertime, the roof will still be buttoned up. There'll be no water coming into the building, and all work would be done on weekends so as not to disrupt education. Obviously, that would be at a greater expense to them, but that's not our problem. They said there is also a supply chain issue with the fasteners that they typically use. They said they could use an adhesive. There's greater cost to that, and that cost, they said, would be borne by the district. I'm not recommending that we do that, because even if we do that adhesive, there could be an issue with the insulation, which we'd wind up paying more money and still be in the same situation. And the other solution they had mentioned was a pour. Right now, we're looking at a 30-year warranty. The roof pour would be a 20-year warranty. They said there would be a substantial credit, but I don't believe that's a recommendation where we want to have partly a new roof, partly a pour. If that's something that we were looking for, we would have bid that out, and that's not a recommendation either. But we just wanted to make everybody aware that supply chain issues could delay this roofing project, which would cause it to be worked on during the weekends.
John, one more thing. We also have a meet and greet on the 16th of this month, next Wednesday, just to get together, have the principal there, go over everything, get a starting location so we can clean the same time they're doing the roof, so we can follow them, and it works well. We had it done in Struble.
Okay, so Mr. Matthew, Valley Carpeting.
Yeah, this will be the 4th grade pod. At Valley, it's our usual carpet replacement. I hate to say it, but it's going to be redundant. Materials is becoming a problem. I hope we can get it in time for the school year. If not, we'll make arrangements to do it in the evening or on the weekends. But we'll make it work if it doesn't come in time.
Okay, the next item, this one is a major issue. The board a few months ago had approved a design professional to provide bid specification for the high school facade, where there was one section that basically dropped several inches. So the brick, the panels, the windows just dropped. Mr. Matthew contacted a structural engineer who's come out, assessed it, said there's no immediate danger, but it should be repaired. We've worked with, their original proposal was in the few $100,000 range. They later amended that to several $100,000. And in that vein, if you recall, a few years ago, we did the secure vestibule projects where we went through the KPN network, and that's what our design professional had recommended to move the project along more quickly, which we agreed with. That contractor through KPN has come back. Their number is much, much higher than what was originally proposed. And in addition to that, in the last year, they've now identified another area in the building where it's dropped. So not only do we have one section, we have two sections now. So what we had thought originally was going to be a several $100,000 repair has now turned into a $1 million repair. Our recommendation is to go out to full bid, wait until next spring, rebid this. The structural engineer said he doesn't believe there is an immediate safety concern, although he recommends that it be monitored on a monthly basis by our facilities department. And we would also recommend that they come out on a quarterly basis to make sure that there is no safety issue with basically this wall falling off the building. But it's a very disconcerting issue because we thought there was just one issue, and we thought it might have been related to the general contractor because it was in an area where they put new windows, and he had thought originally that it could have been when they did some work, they might have disturbed some areas. But now, the second area is in an area where there was no work. So he thinks it may be some type of deterioration with the fasteners being rusting out. So I asked him, I said, well, if this is a building-wide issue, we want to know if there's some type of investigation that you can do, so we can determine what exactly the issue is. He stated without doing any destructive investigation, it's hard to tell. I asked him if they could do it from the inside, said possibly, but he's not 100% certain. So we may wind up having to rip some walls off on the inside of the building to see what's holding up our windows, our panels, and our brick from why they're basically dropping. Like I said, we have two sections, and hopefully it's not a building-wide issue.
Just the question, maybe John or Robin can answer a question. In some of the areas in and around the windows that are changed, that have made openings, they can't bore scope that to see if they can get to some of the fasteners and see what their condition are?
They drilled holes in the side of the building, and they looked in there, and what they're finding is just the actual rods that are holding the facade on are just deteriorating, they're rotten. They're rusted away, the bolts are coming off. They don't have a cause for it. Like Mr. Steffi said, we thought it was construction, maybe too much weight on the building when they were removing the windows, but now it's happening where construction didn't even occur. So they really don't have an answer why it's happening. Just to bring it up, it is safe though. It is not, it's not falling on anybody. And we will keep an eye on it, and I know that we're probably going to recommend that Mike and his crew come out every probably 2-3 months, I would assume, and do a check as well to make sure it stays safe.
They said if they see any issues that we could do some bracing to address any safety concerns, but right now they don't think there's any imminent issues.
So here's another question for that. They couldn't go through areas of the facade and put some type of hydraulic bonding with new rods to fasten it in to hold it back, like put new holdbacks in?
It's actually so much that they have to Sorry. It's dropped so much that they have to take it all off and rebuild it, especially the brick, because the brick is dropped down. It has to be removed and reinstalled.
And that's the reason why we've asked them to do an investigation. So if this is building-wide, get it addressed before it drops, because once it drops, then that's where you have your major cost. So we just wanted to provide that update. I know it's not good news, but I think it's important that everybody's aware of that situation. Next up, facility rentals. Now, Mr. Fanini's up.
Hey, before we get started on this, none of these rentals have fees attached with them, so it's hard to track because none of these have fee structures.
I was just about
Again.
to say the same thing. Maybe it's just not uploaded.
Do we have fee structures for these or fee sheets, whatever?
For the rentals?
Sure, because they're not, again, on the agenda. Just the rental itself, so there's no fee structures attached. I don't know if it was another oversight, but there are no fee structures attached to these agenda items.
Holy Ghost must have a charge, but there's nothing here.
No, they're not charged. There's no rental fee for the tennis court. For the last 5 or 6 years, they've been coming here. They used to use the building for the bathroom facilities. They don't do that anymore. They come for a couple hours a day for a week, and then they're gone. So
Really? We charge I'm just surprised. We charge for, Struble grass. We
Yeah,
char-
there was-
for with no bathrooms, and we charge, what did we charge that time? $1,500 for a season and for grass, but we don't charge for tennis courts?
yeah, we're gonna have to add it to the fee structure. We don't have it in our.
You mean we forgot?
Yeah, we did. So the first one is Holy Ghost for, I think, 4 days, 3 hours a day. They did do the application fee.
When did we realize that we forgot? If they've been using these for 5 to 6 years?
They didn't, it wasn't part of it. We redid the rental thing. We just didn't redo it.
No, but we must have, I don't recall approving this before, but we must have.
We have.
No one realized the past 5 or 6 years that this was overlooked. Someone must have realized something.
Yeah, I guess we discussed it a couple of times and just never put it on to the board to add a fee structure for a tennis court.
The reason I'm saying this, we charged a local youth agency, not in Bensalem, but we charged a local youth agency $1,500. Mrs. Rivera cut a deal with them for grass.
So the recommendation, we'll move forward with implementing a change to our rental policy to include a fee structure for our tennis courts moving forward.
Or perhaps we don't charge for grass. We could do it either way, but perhaps it needs to be discussed.
Go ahead, Mr. Fanini.
The next one is the Bensalem High School Boys and Girls Soccer. It's a community-based intramural soccer program for the feeder program. Again, it's going through the soccer team, so there's no fees involved.
Well, let's just tap the brakes right here.
What, yeah,
So
what is it?
this is a group that went ahead and advertised, took registrations, and gave themselves permissions to do this prior to this permit. So, as a committee, I can't even move this permit out of here because nothing was done correctly, and this is an afterthought. Oh, by the way, let me do what I want, and then submit a permit. And we don't rent our high school varsity fields to anybody. Correct me if I'm wrong. So unless we're going to get started into renting our high school varsity fields to groups, we're not going to start now for a league. And this isn't through the high school boys and girls soccer team. This is for 3 to 10-year-olds. And they're accepting outside registrations from outside the township, which is outside of what I know we're not connected with the township, but it's outside of what the township is doing now. I know we're separate.
No, you mean they just kids who don't live in Bensalem, you mean?
Correct. So the dates listed too also conflict with several other organizations in the area and the programs that they run. So if this was potentially an intramural summer soccer program that was in addition to and helped the soccer programs actually play year round, I might support it. But this is, I'm done. So I'm not even moving this out of this committee, in my opinion. I know it takes one other vote, but I'm not moving this out of the committee.
Well, just
I
so
need to
you-
understand what this is, because I'm looking for the flyer. I think I saw the same flyer as you, Eric. So the high school is running Coach Purr sent me the 2021 summer camps. The high school is running a day camp, a high school camp, and a night camp. Boys and girls, looks like all up, well, if it's the high school camp, high school kids. The other ones are younger children. Now that is the Bensalem program for the summer, right? There is not a Bensalem program for this, is there?
Bensalem School District does not operate intramural programs for 3 to 10-year-olds. This would be
No,
something
no,
new.
But this one says, okay, it's kids, because I have long wanted us to run intramural programs, how the elementary schools play against each other, but that is not what this is, right?
No. This is a Saturday
Where's,
program.
who's got that flyer? I'm looking for it.
You can't find it on Facebook?
I've got
The Facebook
Facebook in my
queen?
hand, I'm trying to remember which group I saw it in. Was it Ben Salem SD parents? I've got it in my hand, Mr. Price. Give me a second. I thought I took a screenshot of it.
So Ms. Whit, you're in agreement with Mr. Price?
I am. Just on the basis of principle, we can't allow people to market and receive funding for something that hasn't been yet approved by the district.
Okay.
Wait, I want to see if it's the same. Oh, what? My favorite friend. But please, Miss Champion, send me the flyer. Look at, people are watching. Miss Champion just messaged me. Send it on over. Could we see it now? She must be listening.
My biggest, well, I agree, I'm not on the committee, but I just want to reaffirm that we are not renting or letting organizations use our varsity fields, because we have spent a lot of money keeping them to where they are.
Mrs. Rivera and I almost went out there to
We
water
would
the
not
grass
let 'em
ourselves.
use the varsity fields.
Miss Champion, where are you sending that? Message me again.
Just so everybody knows, we get a rental form from the boys and girls soccer program, and that's what we got. So
Oh, we got you, Robin. We understand.
That's right.
You're just presenting what you got.
Yeah.
Nothing against you guys. We're good with it.
Thank you.
Can we come
You-
back
you
to
guys
that
aren't
in just a minute, please?
All the outside
Miss
noise.
Champion's right on it here. And she liked my grass comment. Just got to say that publicly. Thank you, Miss Champion.
Mr. Fanini, I mean, until she gets
The
that,
next
you want-
one?
Next one. Robin, we're going to move on with Vita.
The next one is Dance with Celeste. Do you have the cost breakdown for that? The fee schedule?
No
for that?
cost breakdowns.
The cost breakdown was given out back in February. The reason why we're bringing this up is just for attendance in the auditorium.
Right. This was pre-approved. The price was given, we approved it to save the date for them. And then, so this is, the question now is, with the COVID restrictions being lifted, do we still have a limit, or are they unlimited at this point?
So, Lisa, thanks for jogging the memory, because I do remember this now. Robin, thanks for the memory.
So I think the question is the number of people allowed in the auditorium. Has that changed? Are we still at a certain amount, or are we still at 100% open?
Aren't we back to, Dr. Lee, aren't we back to normal? Capacity limits are off for non-school. Yeah, we're back to whatever. Certainly, 185 people is just a fraction. Oh, so
No,
Dance
this
with
is what,
Celeste-
it was less than this when she initially submitted it.
Okay. Dance with Celeste wants 185 people or 5. There's no way. I've been to dance recitals. You don't get more than a couple hundred anyway. Right, Dr. Lee?
That's correct.
Haven't you been to dance recitals?
Been to several.
Yeah, back in the day. Really? 1,300 people at a dance recital?
Downstairs and upstairs. I work this event every year.
All right. Well, how many people does she want? 'Cause
I-
there's no this is the original.
She's still limiting it.
I would imagine, because most that's what I'm talking about. Most recitals I've heard about are still limiting them. I'm sorry, I'm not talking about normal circumstances. I'm talking about this year. The recitals are, I don't know, maybe she's not. But I guess it doesn't matter, right? Because
Yeah.
capacity limits are off, on, off. Gone, as Ms. Wood says.
The last one is the community program, the agreement
Hey,
we had
Robin,
with the
one more
township.
thing before you get there. I just want to make note that this is the day after and schools are closed. Not closed, but there won't be students attending after that. So just to bring that to light.
That's it. The last one is the community center in the practice part of the gym with the agreement we have with the township. Mr. Douglas runs it for volleyball and basketball in the back end. He's just putting the run request in.
Is this to get back to the community time, the basketball, volleyball, et cetera?
Yes.
Were there date, there you go, never mind.
I think it's Tuesday
The
and
one
Thursday.
for Ralph Douglas, for the community application.
I just had a question about that one. There are, besides the basketball season and those dates, don't we use the gym for other things? The first thing that came to my mind is like blue-gray night. You got to have the gym for blue-gray, which I'm hoping will happen this year. But aren't there other things?
Any issues that come up, I think they work when they postpone or, yeah.
Lisa,
But it doesn't say that. It needs to say that.
Lisa's
It
pretty much got a
specifically
Google,
only
a
says-
live Google Doc that everybody can see when the time is. And Mr. Douglas, if he gets an approved permit, can see the Google Doc and know when he has to cancel, when he can't cancel, has to cancel.
And I'm sorry, and that's fine, but it does not say that in what
I'm with
we
you.
are being asked to approve. So it just would need to say,
Contingent upon a
the
school district
motion,
event.
right, the motion, if this would be the motion, is specific here. It says, except during basketball season and any playoff period during the hours of 5:30 to 9. So that it just needs to be amended to address any high school, any district use or whatever. Then why are we being asked to approve it? I think there's probably, it's probably just needs, the language needs to be cleaned up. What policy?
The rental policy.
Rental policy dictates that any school district use trumps any outside.
Okay, then it
use.
needs to be consistent because the public's going to think one thing when this says otherwise. It's a language thing. This is a suit talking.
Right, but when
Needs to be
everybody
cleaned
fills
up.
out the rental form, they get a copy of the policy and it tells them that it's contingent.
I don't care. It should say it here then. I'm telling you, this has the potential to not look good. If that is the policy and that's their understanding, I'm sure Mr. Douglas is aware, right? Then there's no problem in putting it in because once we approve this application, it needs to say that then.
It says it in the policy 707.
Mr. Price, you know a lot more about air handlers than I do. I kind of understand language and contractual matters and
Please don't say more than I do, because I
well,
I don't have a law degree, but I know a lot about contractual law.
and I'm
just
going
so you
to
know.
tell you, I'm going to give you up on some air handlers. You might want to give me a little bit on this one. This is my trained profession. I do this. It needs to be here. It's just language. Clean it up. If it's the policy anyway, it's not a problem. Then it should be in whatever we approve to clarify.
How about we say per board policy?
You can do that if you want, but this application is asking
Add
for
per board policy.
the application says one thing, the motion says another thing, and the policy says otherwise, right? So the policy says one thing. It's just like we need prices for these things. Well, we need clean language as well. They need to be consistent.
Is there even a motion? It says information. Is there a motion for that? It's not even a motion.
There is a facilities rental reform here. Are we not being asked to approve that? Will the board not be asked to approve that? Then why is there a form?
He fills out a form, yes, as an informational, just to bring before you guys as per information every year. So out of courtesy,
Well, the form needs to be clarified. I just don't want, it's always better. We've had this before, like, not this use, but what was it? Some of the scouts things that have happened in other years, that there's been conflicts. that people weren't told in time, et cetera, et cetera. I just don't want any of that happening. This has nothing to do with use of the community center and the brochure. It has nothing to do with that. But we've had issues before in other contexts. Ms. W. might remember this.
We
You're
will
shaking
add
your
that
head.
to
No,
our
maybe not.
form. per
Thank
board.
you.
Okay.
I've got the information. We can go back to 4.02. So back to 4.02, this is the Ben Salem FC Intramural Soccer, and that is run by the same gentleman who is our boys, right? Soccer coach? Just boys or boys and girls? Dr. Lee?
Boys.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brown, who I understand does a great job with Ben Salem FC, but right, this is a Ben Salem FC thing, and I checked the dates. Thank you, Ms. Champion. I checked the dates. They are exactly the same as that which is put on the facility rental, but the facility rental says it's a feeder program, which, yeah, this is inconsistent.
Steph, we're not going forward with it. It's not even.
I wanted to state it for the community because we said we'd come back to it. But I think an intramural program is a good idea, but this isn't it, because this isn't really ours.
Okay, and I apologize, there's one clarification on 4.03.
Go ahead, I'll come back.
So for VITA, I would just add for use from September through the end of the school year during normal custodial hours. So that way there is no incurring of district costs for custodians to open up a building for VITA. Okay, moving on.
Just really quick, why was this? I'm just curious because this isn't Mr. Brown. I mean, his facility rental, I'm going to be fair to him, it does not say that it's a BHS boys and girls soccer. Are our soccer team members being recruited to help facilitate this program?
I don't know.
It doesn't say on the website, which obviously those kids can do as they please. I'm just curious.
Since it's not moving forward, we can probably stop beating that dead horse.
No, it's a different concern. Because on the website, it's a different issue. I don't know if it's business or somewhere else, but the website says who coaches: Ben Salem High School soccer coaches, BHS soccer players, and coaches from Celta Academy. So it looks like it's being advertised as a BHS kind of program, even though it doesn't have the Ben Salem B.
Not our website, is it?
No, it's bensalemfc.com, but on their information, they said who coaches: Ben Salem High School soccer coaches, BHS soccer players. Isn't that, can it be advertised that way? I think there's an
Wouldn't say
issue. Can
it's
we ask this to be looked into?
I have. I just don't have anything to add tonight.
Again, I would love to see us do this, but this isn't really us. I just don't want any misinformation out in the community. I've seen this bannered around. The community is very appreciative of this. I don't want it to appear that anyone here is not in favor of children having opportunities. It's just, I don't want people to misled thinking they're sending their kids to a BHS thing because he may find alternate space, right? So then it leaves us, but let's say he finds space elsewhere, which is certainly possible. I don't want the community to think that this is our program, though, and this is the way it reads. There's just transparency and trust in the community. Think, oh yeah, I'm going to send him to the BHS program. So that's why this still needs to be addressed, even though we're not approving the rental.
Okay. Next up is Mr. Incalingo with technology. He has 3 items.
You're on 5.02? Can I ask a question about 5.01? So the software, somebody in the community asked me about this past weekend, said that we didn't have our Photoshop and CAD software at the high school for most of the year. Is that, first of all, is that accurate? And if it is that here in this list for the next school year? Two different people in the community told me that. So what happened with this school year? Why didn't we have the Photoshop and CAD software? And forgive me, I only know what Photoshop is. I don't know what CAD is.
We had issues with the licensing for CAD and for Photoshop.
So we ran those classes without it? We weren't able to resolve that?
The teachers actually were using some alternate software.
I'll tell you how this came up. A parent said something to me that this person's son's engineering classes were not what they had expected, and he's no longer interested in being an engineer. And then I asked more about it, and they said, well, we didn't have the CAD, whatever that is. Someone who's an engineer might understand that.
Computer
Is Mr. Rowland shaking his head? That goes within our engineering classes? Okay, so CAD software is something we do use in our engineering classes. So the parent was kind of on track. They didn't have it. And unfortunately, the young man doesn't want to be an engineer anymore. He's going to go explore other things. I'm sure he'll find something. But I was just concerned when I heard it. I don't understand how we got to June and never resolved it. Dr. Lee, do you know anything about this?
Just that I was aware that there were some licensing challenges early in the school year, but I was of the impression it was resolved. I wasn't aware of the nature of the resolution, which Mr. Inclingo shared.
So when do the licenses get untangled? So we didn't have them all year. Okay.
Not for those particular products, but you mentioned there were alternate products. And maybe that soured the students' connection with the subject matter.
It's unfortunate. Thank you.
Just give me one moment. I'm going to connect to the screens here. So good evening. I understand it's late, so I will be expeditious here. I'm Brian Allen. I'm the instructional tech coach here in the district currently, and I was invited this evening to discuss the Chromebook deployment and the Chromebook situation in the district. So first, before we jump in to review the process and preparing for this evening, at the June 1st Instructional Affairs Committee meeting, there was a proposal shared out We listened and gathered feedback from the IA discussions, explored additional options internally on what to do with Chromebooks going forward. The team proposed alternate device refresh cycle, which was reviewed actually this past week with Mr. Anklingo, Mr. Steffi, and Dr. Lee, which moved us to this evening. So what we have is a tale of two stories in this district with Chromebooks. We have the one-to-one initiative, which was started back in 2017, 2018. That was a planned, phased rollout. It started in the first year with 7th and 8th grade, and then it grew by one grade level each year going forward. Fast forward to March 2020, COVID-19 hit, and we had to pivot, giving every student in the district a working Chromebook, which meant every student in grades K to 6 and 11 and 12 that were not part of that phased planned rollout. In addition, we had to, the IT department had to distribute Chromebooks to support staff, secretarial staff, student teachers, substitute and interim teachers, and then also maintain an inventory for loaners. Those COVID-19 Chromebooks were sourced from a combination of new purchases, existing inventory, and deconstruction of parts previously deployed in the district. Deconstruction of carts, excuse me. So some guiding principles for the Chromebooks in the district. We know that we do not want students in the one-to-one initiative bucket having devices that are older than 4 years. Any devices that are beyond a 4-year life, we want to assess, inventory, redeploy, if possible, usable ones in the CARTS or loaner program. We want to maintain devices in a regular cycle that is consistent and predictable to budget for. And then lastly, retiring any device that is no longer supported by Google. Right now, a device will be supported by Google for 5 to 7 years. Now, that is a policy decision totally up to Google. They can change it at any time. There's no guarantee that if we buy device A today and it says they'll support it for 5 years, at their whim, they could change it tomorrow and say, we're going to sunset that device next year. It's just the business of Google. However, it's not so mean-spirited. They have actually been extending the life cycle beyond the 5 years, in which has gotten the 5 to 7 year window. After a device is hit end of life, that does not mean it doesn't turn on anymore. It just means they don't receive security updates. So that's one authority in determining the lifespan. And then the other one more locally here to a school district is DRC. DRC is the testing authority for state mandated testing. So DRC might say a device, they only go up to a certain version, which is separate than Google. So they're mutually exclusive kind of guiding rules as to what we would determine the lifespan locally of a Chromebook. So here's a visual representation of the Chromebooks that we have deployed in our district. You'll see that they're, this is as of today. So we have devices that have just finished their first year of service, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and beyond. We estimate, and I say estimate, approximately 1,100 to 1,500 devices are in the 4 years or beyond category. The big majority of those devices is the Dell 3180s, which is the 10th and 11th grade. So this slide's in response to a specific request. I don't have the back history to the specific request, but what it was the devices in the left-hand side, the estimated amount and brand, where were they? And so in working with some of the IT staff, we've determined with using our Google console where these devices are in the majority. And I'd just like to point your attention to the highlighted green box. The Acers and Dells, they are in the 4 to 5 year world, the 4 to 5 year lifespan, and that does tally about 1,600 devices. Sure.
Is this anywhere accessible? I mean, do we have it other than right here?
It's in my Google Drive, but I can give it to Dr. Lee to.
I can't, I want to do some addition. Go ahead.
Do you want to take a picture? Mhm. So there is some discussion in longer term planning in terms of Chromebooks, but there's going to be some transitions in the district, so we're focusing right now on getting us from this year to next year. This table represents the current year on the top and the next year on the bottom. Each grade level is shown with the current device model and its appropriate approximate age underneath. On the top, in grades K to 4, the M represents mixed devices. In green, 5th, 6th, and 7th grade shows students have a Generation 8 device that are now 1 year old. In the peach color, 8th grade has Lenovo devices that are 2 years old. 9th grade has Dell devices, which with other ones mixed in, so it's not necessarily a pure number in the 9th grade. In the spirit of full transparency, nothing's pure here because of breakage and whatnot that had to be swapped out. In blue, 10th and 11th grade have Dells, which are now 4 years old, the infamous Dell 3180s. Our seniors currently have Generation 7s, and they are 2 years old, represented in this table in pink. So now
How would they be 2 years old? They just got them in March of 2020.
So they got them last year. So last
They're
year,
not really 2 years old.
So where we got the years from are years of service, and then also with what the projected lifespan of the device is.
But they've been in use 1 full year and a month or two, because they didn't get them until March or April. So they're really 1 year. That's when they got them.
So can I just see if I can't
So I don't understand why it's
what
2
Stephanie's
years.
saying? So you're basing it on when we purchased them, that starts the lifespan, not the actual time they were in service?
Both. So there's
He's using the school year.
The school year, but also it's the projected life of the device. So if we purchase, let's say a device was purchased, go for easy numbers, 2020, not purchased. If it was created by Google in 2020, we purchased it in 2021. So that device is 1 year old, even though it's never touched a desk in Ben Salem, because Google will only support a particular device from its initial rollout date for 5 to 7 years. So it's a mixed number. There's service, there's actual expected life expectancy of a device. I do understand. I'll think of another way to explain it.
I get it, but if they're at 5 to 7 years, that's not necessarily going to be material, because we already know just from wear and tear on high school and middle school kids, they're barely limping at 4 years anyway, right? So it's not
agree.
right. So it's not really going to matter. I mean, in some ways, just again, life cycle with a middle school or high school student, that is still 1 year. We won't make the Google cutoff.
And just so what we're planning on doing with those particular 12th grade devices is next year cycling them to the juniors. They'll have them their junior and senior year, and then we'll put them into carts. So on the bottom, it represents where the students and devices will be moving to next year.
But that's different what was proposed. I've got the...
From last week?
Yeah.
We've took the feedback from what we had heard and put together like a new plan. And part of it, I believe part of, and I think you may have said this last week, the feasibility of collecting all of these devices in a week and then having them ready to hand back out, I think people agree with you there, and personally I do too, that was a heavy lift to get done in a week. So with that feedback, we went back and came up with honestly somewhat of a long-term plan. What's only being shown tonight is to get us through from this year to next year, because there are other changes in the department that we don't want to put forth a plan that maybe somebody has a better plan that's going to be joining the team.
And this plan now has an even greater number of new purchases than last week.
So so I'd like to bring your attention to grades 5, 9, and 10. If this is approved, this particular plan, those grade levels will be receiving new devices. What we would do is we would collect their current devices at the time of distribution, and then we would redeploy the 8th grade device. So next year, seniors would receive the Lenovo's that we collect from the 8th grade at the start of the year.
Wait a minute. 5th graders just got them. Current 5th graders, right? We're referring to current 5th graders?
So this current year's 5th graders would
Yes.
be next year's 6th graders. They'd be at the bottom in green, keeping their device. Current 5th grade, so current 4th graders have mixed devices on the
But
top.
the Instructional Affairs Committee did not recommend going one-to-one there. I wrote it down. That is not what the Instructional Affairs Committee recommended.
So-
Ms. Nicholas left, but Mrs. Nicholas, but
That was going to be my next question, if we were expanding our one-to-one initiative.
We did not.
To 5th graders.
We did, no. The only thing we said was for the current 5th graders, because first, we only have 7 to 12 right now. And Mr. Allen, I'm sorry. This isn't all on you. I'm looking at you. I apologize. That's what happens. Like Brian Cohen sits there. He gets all the.
So note to self, sit over there.
Sit elsewhere. Sit where I can see Mr.
Inklingo, is that
Inklingo.
why you're standing
Okay,
sitting
but
over there?
You're stretching my neck, Mr. Inklingo. Let me go back. So at Instructional Affairs, we were very clear. Mrs. Nicholas and I were the two board members present, that we did, and the entire instructional cabinet agreed that we would only extend 1-to-1 instead of 7 to 12. It would be 6 to 12. Okay, that was very clear from instructional cabinet. They presented information about their plan. And so the current 4th graders who, as I understand it, have used ones, right? There would be no purchase. We did not, Instructional Affairs from an instructional perspective did not say this. Sorry, I'm getting a little flustered now because this changes from week to week. I brought my little plan from instruction, the PowerPoint I was given in Instructional Affairs is and I am on that committee, and we were clear.
So what this does is it's a replenishment of devices.
No,
So-
they weren't going to have devices. Next year's 5th graders were not going to use devices instructionally. That is what instructional cabinet said. So there would be no replenishment, because what you're saying is the current 5th graders have got the G8s. They're going to keep them because then they'll be in 6th grade next year. And we said fine, rather than taking them back. Instructional Affairs, and based on the curriculum request from instructional cabinet, and Ms. Nicholas and I agreed, the next year's 5th graders would not have 1-to-1. None of that would not happen, because instructionally they weren't ready to proceed with that. They wanted time to look at maybe next year, or 22-23, but not 21-22. So why is that there? And the reason I'm getting a little upset, I've been beating around this since February, and once again, we're back and forth between committees. There's no one here from instructional cabinet right now, but because I am on that committee, I know, I took notes. I know what was said to me. It's in their own PowerPoint. So I don't know if I brought that page of it.
And you are right. So last week.
Why is Mr. Allen taking this heat?
That's fine. Because I'm pretty close to this right now, that I understand what is going on.
That needs until instructional cabinet says they have an instructional plan, which they did not.
So let's.
Why is it there?
Let's delete that block.
Yes,
and focus on 9 and 10.
right? And 9 and 10, the seniors, because they had only been in use since March, and some of them, they didn't even bother to use them. Because, I mean, the high school kid who works for me, his is still sitting in the box. He just thought he had to pick it up, so he did. There was a different plan.
So what I would like to point out is that we kind of benefit from, we're going to have to purchase Chromebooks each year going forward. We benefit from purchasing them in 5th grade and 9th grade, because 5th grade, the students would then have them 5, 6, 7, 8, 4 years. 9th grade, they would have them 9, 10, 11, 12.
Except you have an instructional cabinet who says they do not have an instructional plan to use them.
I hear you. And so in terms of budgeting, this, you get more out of the device than doing it a different way. Like, I hear what you're saying.
Until the instructional cabinet has a plan to make use of them, why would we spend the money? Maybe, I mean, when we first started this, right, because I remember my daughter was one of the 7th graders. You did 2 years at once, right? I understand the rationale behind this because you're going to a 4-year cycle. If we did do K to 12, you're eventually, you're going to be buying $1,500 every year, $2,000 on the 4th year. I get this because I know more about this than I wish I did. I understand that, but there is no instructional plan that was presented to instructional affairs about this. So I think Dr. Lee's right, unfortunately.
Well, there will be an agenda item for your consideration in a couple of weeks to renew our 520.1 plan, which speaks.
It was we were assured in instructional affairs that was not dependent on devices. Okay. I asked that question specifically, and they, again, I didn't bring the entire PowerPoint, didn't realize I had to, and we were told that it would be fine, it was not needed.
And thank you. So forget about the 5th grade, if we could focus on the 9th and 10th.
So with that, this timeline would have to be adjusted because this particular timeline presented here factors in purchasing 3 grade levels. But
wait, can I just ask something real quick? I am sorry. I'm just flabbergasted. This goes back and forth. And Mr. Allen, you certainly may not have the answer to this, but when you met to put all this together, which is a coherent plan, was the instructional cabinet asked to sit at that meeting?
They were not.
Despite the request for this to stop being bounced back and forth. I do not understand why they would not have been.
They actually had some contribution to this plan. They did not, I don't know if they followed through the whole process with us or not, but at this point they were, I mean, Ms. Hinshaw was involved with it. Mrs. Leon was involved with it. So, and then we just continued to go with it from the tech side of things.
Well, all I can say is I know what was presented at Instructional Affairs. Anybody can watch the video. It's inconsistent. So I don't know when they were involved with this, but.
so then what I would say is we received quotes today in the for 1,500 for 3 grade levels. Obviously, we can have that adjusted to 2 grade levels if that's the recommendation. In the spirit of what's been said here a lot tonight in terms of sourcing materials and sourcing products, the vendors have said that they have devices in pocket right now, but they can't promise that they would be there tomorrow. They've been flying off the shelves because of districts that have deployed old devices are now working to replenish them with newer devices. We can get to Mr. Steffi an updated, because the quotes are for 1,500. We can get an updated quote for 1,000 if that's appropriate.
Well, I know you weren't privy to it, Mr. Allen, but I sent a memo after Mr. Steffi was kind enough to sit down with me. And you'd have to go back to one of your charts. I don't understand why we need to buy any. God bless, based on what was presented in instructional affairs. If you put together where the devices are based on what instructional affairs gave us, plus I went back and I looked at every board approval for a purchase from 2017 forward, and then Mr. Steffi was kind enough to give me pay dates on what we've actually purchased. Based on that, we have purchased brand new Chromebooks from the 1920 and 2021. We've purchased 4,647. Based on what IA said, there are 2,500 of same time frame in the hands of students. And then I think someone mentioned, Mr. Albert mentioned that there was probably, or no, it wasn't, no. Somebody said, there's the last 600 we bought, we thought they were going to go to incoming kindergartners or something, but they're actually on carts. Right? So these numbers, and here, I'll hand this out. I made a chart. They don't match. And so I don't understand if we've purchased 4,647 new Chromebooks since over the summer of 2019, and we're going to put them in the hands of what number of grades? 7 grades? That's 3,500. So why, then even if you put 600 in carts or whatever, but why are we purchasing a new 1,000? That may not be something you can answer, but I'm going to pass this out. I don't understand this. I want our children to have what they need, but I don't understand what these extras are.
The extras reflected in what you're sharing with us now?
Same thing I handed you the other night. Yeah. What I just handed you is my own spreadsheet. The top part, it says Chromebooks and distribution dates. This information was presented at Instructional Affairs. This is what they said. That there were these number of Chromebooks went into hands, and this is consistent with kind of what we in the community know to have happened, right? Fine. If you add that up, 1920, 2021, a total of 2,500 went into kids' hands, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and the 12th graders. That's 2,500. If you look in green, this is what the board approved. Now, there's obviously there can be a little bit of discrepancy between what the board approved and what's actually purchased. Things can change along the way. A distributor doesn't have this many. You need different types. I get that. But we approved in that same time period the purchase of 3,920. And Mr. Steffi gave, that's me, that's not Mr. Steffi. I went back and looked at board minutes, all of them. Then you go in the blue, that I just retyped what Mr. Steffi gave me, Mr. Haskin, right, John? Mr. Haskin prepared this. This is what we actually bought. That is a grand total of 4,647. These numbers do not match. So, and again, don't mean to be looking at you, Mr. Allen. I don't know who this is, but if you look at these numbers, and Mr. Steffi looked at this chart, the 4,647 are correct. The 3,920 is correct. And the brand new ones, based on even your chart tonight, that's where they went. So where are the other 2,500 plus 600 in carts? That's 3,100. That means 1,500. Did they go to other people? I don't know, secretaries. I don't know. Are they somewhere K-4, current K-4? I don't know, where are they? That's my only problem. Because based on the new purchases that have occurred since 1920, the 1920 school year, we have enough to give to give our 9th and 10th graders. And based on a 6 to 12 1-to-1, we don't need to buy any. And I have been over, I've been over this a lot. Mr. Steffi's confirms I'm right, at least on that part. So,
Bill, do any of these consider our non-public purchases or 21st Century Grant?
yes, no, I kept that out. But there's still more. There weren't that many. There was a board resolution to do, well, there's a couple of things. We approved the purchase of some for the computer labs, like the photo, whatever, that was in here. And we approved some specific purchase for 21st Century, but they weren't that many.
Steph, can I ask a question? These are all actually purchased or just approved?
No, the green, what you see in green, is what we approved. Oh, sorry. Okay. You see where it says board approvals?
Right. So what I'm asking is
That was what is approved. But
we
if
ha-
you go down at the bottom, district purchases, that's John's. This is John's spreadsheet. Yes, we purchased. We bought these according to Mr. Steffi. We paid for them.
I know we had the one that was canceled because of
Yes.
the customs.
It accounts
So
for that.
That accounts for that 60.
Yes. Yes. This is what we actually purchased. I got this from Mr. Steffi with Mr. Haskins' help. Yeah, this isn't coming from me. Right, because I said the board approval, I'm sorry, we didn't have color. That middle section, right, and I understand that may differ from what we actually purchased, but this is what we purchased. And according to instructional affairs and what, those of us who are parents kind of know what's going on out there, 2,500 new ones made it into the hands of 5th, 6th, 12th, 7th, and 8th over these 2 years. So, and we should get back, right? We're going to get some of them back at least from the 12th graders. And there's this, it was reported at IA last week that 600, see that February 2021 purchase for 600 HPs, see at the very bottom? Those went into cards. So that was reported there. So I know where those 600 are. But
Can I ask a logistical question? I don't know who to direct it to. When we give out and purchase these Chromebooks, how do we keep account of them? Is there some master document that we utilize? How do we keep account of them?
Through our Google Admin console. So once we enter them into that, then they will have the serial numbers that we need for them and that sort of thing. So our challenge was, though, we could have actually tied them to students' names, but when that all was taking place last year and we were being told get the devices out, and everybody else was complaining about it. You had plenty of things put out on social media about how we're not getting them out quickly enough. So we had to do what we had to do. So that the only thing we're not doing with those devices at this point is tying the specific student's name to it. We have the serial numbers that will match it, but we don't have the specific student's name there.
so do we know if wait a minute, the serial number matches what? I'm sorry, make sure I understand.
The serial number goes into the Google Admin console. Okay, and so that serial number is what represents that device.
And how do we know where that device goes?
That is where the students, and that's where I said we did not match the students to the device. We maintained the serial numbers. We have long lists of serial numbers in our Google Admin console.
So theoretically, we don't know who has what device.
Yes, we do not know which student has which device at this point.
So it could be when we get the devices, because that's important, because in instructional affairs, we said, well, just let K to 4 keep them. Because they're so old and ready to go on municipal, it didn't make sense for the person power to bring them back, see what's ready for municipal. We said just leave them. But it could well be that there's K to 4 has 1,000 new ones. But spread out between them, right? So we do need to get those back.
Yeah,
Because if we get those back, and there's 1,000 to 1,500 out there, then we don't need to make a purchase. Because, and the current 10th and 11th graders must have new ones, and maybe the 9th graders, they said 9th graders as well. But between collecting them from the 12th graders and whatever's out there that may be new K to 4, we do not need a purchase.
If we collect from the primary grades, correct?
Correct. And the only reason at Instructional Affairs that we said we were not going to collect from K to 4 is because we were told they were in all old. We look at the video. I mean, they were all old, end of life. And I said, well, if they're that old, what are we going to get from Unicibid? And why would we want to go through the personnel time to collect them? Now, if they're not really that old and they were just purchased, then we do need to collect them and see what's there. That was what was discussed specifically at Instructional Affairs. Anybody can watch that video.
So the high school carts that we dismantled, okay, in the very first go round with COVID, there were roughly 35 devices per cart, 26 carts total. So I'm not going to do the math off the top of my head. Somebody, come on, John, give me the numbers.
Yeah, it was a lot. I get that. So that's why we were told that they went out to K to 4. But as you can see here, there's 1,000 or so.
900, yeah.
Well, there's a whole bunch of new ones.
So there are 900. What I'm referring to is the high school is the 900 that we've been using up there, the black HPs. Okay, they have been our loaners, and we keep handing them out to replace damaged devices.
Where are the black I'm sorry, I don't know what the black HPs mean. When were those purchased?
Oh, 2013.
Okay. None of that. Okay. Madam Chairman, may we have a very brief executive session?
Okay.
No, no,
No, no, no.
no.
So there's a different recommendation though.
Yeah, I'm gonna share out with our team if I could.
But yeah, the
I could
Chromebook
recommend it.
recommendation isn't staying.
Yeah, if the chair could advance through the agenda, that's my current recommendation. Or request.
Okay,
Do we just have 6.01 left, Madam Chair?
I believe so.
That is it.
Ms. Dove says yes, and therefore it is so.
Yes.
Is there nothing on 6.01?
It's just the capital reserve and bond. Yeah.
Just making people aware what's there. It's just informational.
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
You got it. So moved. Let's go.
Wait, I have to say one thing because I'm going to get blasted
We
on.
adjourned
No,
already.
no. Josh, I see Josh's finger. I know you didn't. Thank you. I don't want to get blasted for not wanting our kids to have Chromebooks. That's not it. So don't go. Facebook world has not.